Doodletones recently dropped a video that talks about Lio Convoy and the FCK, and I'd like to go over that with you. As usual, I will not be going over the entirety. This video is 3 hours long, but I will be linking it down below, so if you'd like to check it out for yourself, which I highly recommend, just in case I'm cutting the context. Now, early on to the video, Doodles admits to making the spreadsheet.
I talked with a few people involved in all of that, plus waded through the entirety of exported logs myself, along with 2 other Senate members. Keeping a spreadsheet on hand to catalog and organize who all did what and when, I went full-on investigator in this situation because I wanted to be as thorough as I humanly could be.
So another claim from my sources that ended up being true. Susie even further elaborates how they helped Lio Convoy with his video.
However, because of this betrayal, I was just driven further in my resolve to help Lio get his story and facts straight to address everything. I didn't write the script for him or anything, so let's skip that off the table. I merely gave him notes on what he should be addressing and helped him in researching and gathering as much evidence as he needs.
But remember, folks, he didn't have the FCK folks help him with his video. He got evidence from Nezi Monster and had Doodletones' help with setting up his response video. Interesting how that works. We're only a few minutes into the beginning portion of this video, and 2 of my claims from my predictions that came from my sources have ended up being true. But I can almost guarantee you, as I'm reacting to this, as I'm making the video, Doodletones is no doubt gonna do the "he's well poisoning." Now we're moving on to about 1 hour and 7 minutes into Doodle's video, because that's where the vein is, so that we can harvest this delectable Tism elixir. This is the part where Doodletones talks about the FCK, and especially me.
So first, before I get into this chapter, I'd like to apologize to Laka Mocha Laka. We had our first interaction during this whole ordeal, and when asked questions about my particular involvement in the Fruitcake Club, I panicked and got my wires all sorts of crossed and couldn't give them the straight answers that I thought I had. And that's very much in part because my memories of the FCK were very much clouded by my most recent peruse through the chat 4 years after having left there. During a call that was had with Akumu and Nezi in the Senate in May of 2023, Nezi and I only really prior knew the FCK as that chat Toasty Vanilla ran, or for me, that chat that sparked the Toby Majestic drama.
I just want to preface this with the fact that Nezi Monster and Doodletones in the Nezi call, when I brought up the fact that minors were being shown porn in this chat and that there was porn spam, didn't act surprised at all. In fact, they immediately said, particularly Doodletones, that it was the environment that Toasty Vanilla made. They were not shocked at all when I brought that up.
We're winding down. We're almost out of time here. Do we have anything else we need to cover that's of actual significance to all of this?
I do have questions regarding the FCK server. I'm not asking about the whole Toasty stuff because that, again, is your all stuff to handle.
All right, let's go ahead and lightning round that sucker then.
So I can send evidence for this if you want. The problem is that it's porn.
We're all 18. We're all over 18 here. There are no children in this server.
Okay.
But thank you for checking.
Perfect. So, there was a lot of porn sent in that server, and this is just one issue that I had that I've discussed previously, is that a lot of, well, Mad Libs, I can say this about Mad Libs, initially her server had a lot of minors and a lot of porn in it that they had access to. That was also a problem with Lucy's server, and you all, well, okay, I won't say you all, because I'm not going to rope you in with it, but I'll talk about the group. And I have questions specifically because you've seen it, and you were in an interaction when they were sending porn, and the only thing that you sent was a little holy water meme. You didn't say anything about the fact that, well, Teddy at the time was like 16 or 17. Slimmers was 15 at the time. And then James was like 16. And those weren't the only minors in that Discord, but those are the 3 I can confirm at the time. And there was like just a fuck ton of porn sent in the server. Madlib sent porn, Lucy sent porn, Toasty sent a lot of porn. He sent the most of it. What is with the porn spamming?
I don't know. He would do that in our conversations too.
Well, he wasn't the only one that did it.
It was just kind of...
I know.
It was just kind of the environment that Toasty, built. I do remember
and there was
that.
NSFW specific chats. I don't like the fact that he had an NSFW chat specifically for Slimmers for her art.
Well, yeah. But the NSFW
Which is one of the reasons why I left.
led out of the NSFW.
And you can go watch this for yourself. It's linked down below. But I just want to state that ahead of time in case there's perhaps some lying about this.
We obviously did not remember a ton of what went on in that chat in hindsight, and so the conversation obviously didn't really feel all that productive as a result. I could have told you a vague recollection regarding how Toasty allowed porn in like every chat, but even I had trouble recalling specifics, so having gone through much of the logs that were exported for me to go through might have repainted my perspective on what all actually happened in there. So I hope I didn't confuse you too much, Laka, and if I did, I'm sorry. That said, I also have to thank you for that conversation, not only because I was able to dispel a notion regarding how much I helped ponder Sprocket's Spoctor Theory videos, a notion I frankly was not even aware of was actually there to begin with, but also because it did get me to rethink and look back into my time actually in the FCK. And I think I've pieced together my timeline better, so let me go through it. So when the Senate Archive crew of 3 went through the logs, we did find that I had joined March 31st, 2020, and last posted June 3rd, 2020, which tells me that as far as activity goes, that was my most active time frame, which, frankly, given how few messages I posted in there, is really surprising. But I also remember the Ben the Looney stuff happening in there, which, if I'm not mistaken, had to be like late June, early July-ish, so there could have been a month period where I just sat in the chat and didn't pay it very much mind. With that said, my involvement within the chat was very lukewarm. Like, maybe there's 1 or 2 conversations where I either worded myself in a slightly inappropriate way, such as my conversation with Fuchsia Butters about what we want out of our transition, or otherwise joined in on a conversation I should have stopped, such be the conversation about people drawing porn of YouTubers. And while I'm sorry if I made anyone uncomfortable by that, I should clarify that my interactions with the people in there were under the presumption that the chat wasn't how the chat actually was. And by that I mean, I had no idea that there were any minors within it.
Oh, we've got our first lie. So to break this down, and this idea that I know people are going to push, that Doodletones didn't know anything about the Madame and Slamurs drama shit. No, Doodles did know, because in Doodle's Best of 2019 list, guess what video's listed? Ponder's video on Madame, stealing hearts with exposure. But it doesn't stop there, because on Doodle's Best of 2020 list, Nezi Monsters Part 1 from the collab that Nezi did with Ponder Sprocket, On Me, is listed on there. Another video that repeatedly states that Slamurs was a minor, that she was 15. So there's no way that Doodles didn't know Slamurs was in the fucking Discord, especially when we take into account that Slamurs' testimony tells us that everyone in there knew that she was the Slamurs. And there's no way Doodles didn't know that Slamurs was a minor, considering Doodles had 2 videos that state that on the best series list. And another thing that Doodles commonly says in regards to the best and worst list is that a prerequisite to end up on either one is that Doodles actually has to watch the video. This means that Doodles did watch Ponder Sprocket's video. And on top of this, just a cherry on top, Doodles actually commented early on Nezi Monster's Part 1 out of the 2-part collab a month earlier, because Nezi Monster had her Part 1 done in February of 2020. So Doodles got to watch the video early in February.
The first conversation I had with anyone in that chat was Toasty asking if there were any bad blood between me and the others in the chat. And I listed off everyone that I knew in there, being Just a Robot, Manga Common, and Ben the Looney, with Toasty themselves pointing out that I previously knew the names Junkie and Nezi Monster, as well as Ellie Momelli, who by the time that I was in there dipped from the chat. I knew no one else, and in my time in there, while I definitely met some of the other people, like this was the chat where my very brief friendship with Madlibs and Fuchsia Butters was sparked, as well this was the server where I briefly chatted with Peaches, ZZ, and Toby, I otherwise never really got to know anyone other than Toasty themselves. They were the person I had the most consistent voice chats with, as well as like one other person in there, but for the life of me I cannot remember their name. I just knew that they weren't a content creator, but were one of Toasty's pals. Mind you, even me being in voice chats was sporadic on its own, but of the handful of chats that I did have a call with Mimi Diggs, though her age was never brought into the conversation, and I can only say this because I had no idea they even were a minor until their statement came out, as well as a call or 2 with Teddy Draw Stuff, but Teddy in my time being there was only there for about a month, and I remember this because I reached out to Toasty to see if Teddy was okay on April 29th. Her age was also never brought to my attention, and I can say this for the same reason. As for Slamurs, I remember a conversation where Toasty told me that they weren't in the chat anymore, and looking back through the logs, unless I'm missing something, I didn't see any conversation between the two of us via chat.
So even if you two never spoke, you're admitting that back in 2020 you remember a conversation where Toasty Vanilla admitted to you that Slammers used to be in the server, and that didn't raise any eyebrows to you. You're saying that you didn't know any minors were in there, yet we know you knew Slammers' age because you put 2 videos stating such on your series list. But you're also admitting here and now that in 2020, Toasty Vanilla told you that Slammers was once in the group. So I'll be charitable, give you the benefit of the doubt here. At the very least, you knew that a minor was in the server.
Plus, looking through the logs, Slammers does disappear around the time that I joined, so that would seem reasonable for me to have overlooked the little bit that she was in there for. I definitely do not recall ever talking with Slammers, is the point. So I was in the dark about a lot of things, and given how Toasty would just casually post porn everywhere, were it someone else, I could say it'd be a bit forgivable if they mistook the chat for an 18+ server. Like, literally one of the rules in there was that you had to tell people if you were a virgin, so I don't know, what would you have expected? Especially since prior I was also in Chaos 55T's personal NSFW server, the Pregnancy Haven.
Is everyone here supposed to pretend to be shocked about that? Alright guys, everyone put on your surprise faces. Gasp even.
Or something like that, which, again, was also 18+ to my knowledge. Again, I then dipped around the time of the Ben the Looney stuff, and then I think I learned that Toasty was a creep around the video Galbinum made on the Toby Majestic and Toasty Vanilla stuff in October of that year. But by that point, I had already stopped really talking with Toasty, I had backed out of the Fruitcake Club, and many of the ties were severed by that point, barring like Junkie, Chaos, and Nezi.
You're admitting to, at some point in 2020, near the ass end of it, that you knew that Toasty Vanilla was a creep. Yet you never made any video condemning him. And I'm not saying you have to. The point is this. You love to get on other people and to grandstand them and to tell them that they need to be held accountable. Do I need to point to the calls that you did with Lio dragging people in to be berated by you all, and Lio trying to hold them accountable and threatening them with Lio? Yet this never happened with Toasty. In fact, just to add to this, you've never said a fucking thing about anything that the FCK was doing, ever. You talk about how you're open to criticizing your friends, and you've done so a little bit in this video previously when it comes to Lio. Yet when it comes to anything that the FCK ever did, you have remained quiet on it, and that includes Toasty Vanilla's involvement. You had no problem grandstanding everyone else for views and attention. Surely you could have done so with Toasty.
I didn't really keep in contact with very many people by that point, and so a lot of what happened hadn't really kept in my mind, not helped by the fact that, as I was also reminded as of scripting, that Gal had gone back on what they had said about Toasty like a few months later.
I almost ruined 3 lives. One is Maria Kutsu, another is Toasty Vanilla, who I am in good terms with and has been on another account for their safety. The last one is named Two.
I especially didn't have the logs by that point. I'd only gotten my own copy of the logs by November of 2023, so I could look through them for the Ben the Looney conversation while I was making my video on Spockner. Of course, we know what happened between then and now. I've been terribly busy with medical problems and SCC cleanup, so there's not really much that needs to be discussed as to why I hadn't talked about this sooner, something else that had been asked of me in the Laka call. I only started looking through the logs when it was requested of me by Lio in February of this year, and so prior, I didn't remember everything, and when I could be reminded of it all, I hadn't had the ability to. So, yeah, take that as you will. You can choose to believe me or not. After all, much of the FCK stuff is very messy, and my memory has been and could still be very faulty. If there are inaccuracies in what we can see in logs, or someone else from the chat can remember something, then I can come back and make corrections when needed, but that's more or less my full testimony that I can give you now. However, this situation isn't about me. It shouldn't be about me, and I do not want it to be about me. Like, I can only give you my perspective at the end of the day, but it's not the perspective that matters the most. The perspective that matters the most is of the victims of Toasty Vanilla and the others in the chat. And I hope it's been talked about by the point that this is released, but I had learned that there was some actual grooming by members of the chat in there, unfortunately most of it being very external. So you're gonna want to listen to the stories of those who were groomed, listen to the names that they bring up, listen to the stories that these people tell, as it's them that are the most important. Now that's not to underplay the behavior in the server. There is a lot of guilty parties, and even my friends who had gotten involved in areas where they shouldn't have. But the hyper-focusing on who was in the server instead of the what actually happened in there is, at least in my opinion, a problem. Thuman's video probably should be out by the time this video is, so her video allowing the victims to speak will also be linked in the description below. And if it's not, well, when it's released, it will be, and I'll probably link it in my community tab. But that said, as much as the victims in this matter the most, they are the people who have been considered the least from what I've seen. Akumu and the Fruitcake Club leaks account run by Galbinum had been making much of this conversation about themselves, Lio, and the Senate. And this gross disregard to the victims that this discussion could help is frankly irresponsible of the both of them.
I noticed you failed to explain why, so I'll do it for you because, as usual, you guys fucking suck. The reason Lio and Peaches became an epicenter of the conversation was because Lio chose to insert himself into this February. He chose to then lie repeatedly in his conundrum video that he rushed out, in the February 28th Senate call, and in his A Crystal Flame video. So February and March, lying back to back to protect Peaches, only to be backstabbed. That's why Peaches and Lio have taken an epicenter in that. Because he chose to come to bat for Peaches. Because he chose to side with you all in some shitty attempt to fucking defend you. So let's get that out of the way. And in regards to me talking about my experience, why wouldn't I talk about my experience exactly? The entire point of my series that I've made extremely fucking clear, I don't know how many videos I can repeat this in, maybe 6, 7 at this point, was to show the community how these people are. The sanctimonious hypocrisy, and a perfect example of that is grandstanding me as this big, bad, malicious entity trying to dox people and all this other shit that they falsely accused me of, while simultaneously, behind the scenes, either being degenerate with minors, or knowing about others being degenerate with minors. You all put on this facade and grandstand over shit you don't actually fucking care about, and then when it comes to yourself, or your friends doing shit, it stays hush-hush. That is to show the sanctimonious hypocrisy, the moral virtuous act, and how your true behavior behind the scenes, where your audience can't see, you do the exact opposite. That's why I talked about my experience, and this attempt to moral grandstand me about caring about the victims when you allegedly tried to get them to defend you all is actually fucking insane to me. But on top of that, the truth is that throughout many of the years since this happened, since 2020, I tried to get many of the other people negatively impacted, okay, by this group to talk about it. And that includes Teddy the Draws. I tried to get her to talk about it in 2020. In 2023, I tried to get her to talk about it. But because Nezi Monster and Doodletones reached out to her for calls so that they could align their story, she didn't want to do so. That was before the Nezi Senate call, by the way. But of course, Doodles isn't going to tell you that. Or how about the fact that I reached out to James to try and get his testimony? I've had an open dialogue with any of these people that want to have an open dialogue with me, but this idea that I'm the bad guy because I'm talking about my experience and they can talk about their experience. I realized pretty quickly in 2021 and 2022 that no one was going to come play Captain Kirk and talk about how these people needed to be held accountable or share my side of the story so that full transparency could be out there. That wasn't going to happen. If I wanted that to happen, if I wanted a conversation to happen about the FCK and what took place, I was going to have to do the work myself. And that's exactly what I did. I spent months compiling shit together, editing videos, and then releasing them so I could share them with you all. And while I do appreciate everyone who has helped me out and the project out, especially like Slammers and Inla, and the various people that have covered this on streams so that more and more people can see this community for what it is, 90% of the stuff in my series is shit that I had to put together. This wasn't a situation where like Ponder Sprocket made a video defending me and getting my side out. It wasn't anything like that, and no one was ever going to do that. Because it'd be fucking nuclear. It wouldn't rake in views, and the ArtCC already disliked me because of the false accusations, so no one was ever going to do that. So I put the work in myself. Not once have I attempted or tried to sway these individuals from not talking about it on their own. They can make YouTube videos talking about it. They can make Twitter threads talking about it. Teddy did fucking streams talking about it. Streams that I showed up to. So unless you have some proof of me trying to stop the victims talking about it, what the fuck are you talking about? This entire little speech of yours means absolutely nothing. It's completely empty. You have no morale backing this.
Let's start with Gal. Galbinum was an ex-SCC member who used to go by the name only Jesp. This is not the name they wish to go by now, so from this point on I will only be referring to them as Gal. But I bring up this previous alias to give context to where I stand with them. Gal was a member of the community that I hang around. Gal was also a member of my commentary group, the Cloud Palace. With this, you can probably imagine my frustrations when they go around on their accounts to try and start shit with those they know better than the accusations they've been making about us. Calling the slideshow commentary community transphobic for using a name that wasn't even considered a dead name by that point has gotta be the most wild accusation I've ever heard. Because many of us are trans and commonly will show our support when we need to. Hell, the biggest person Gal took beef with in said thread was Jace, who is transmasc non-binary themselves. And for what? Saying that they were holding back their inner frustrations with you in fear of getting banned off of Twitter? Mind you, this isn't even the first time that Gal had gone around making wild or faulty allegations against those in the SCC. They've had quite the grudge with us since we kicked them out because of the shit that they were doing while in the community. Link to those stories down below too if they're ready. Hell, they even once alluded to the SCC being a trigger for them directly, talking about how scared they were of us.
So, I have this video unlisted for a reason. Mainly because I'm kinda scared of the SCC, and given how this person acted at the end of his video, I just don't want this out there in the open where this dude could also lash out at me. I'm kind of scared of getting screamed at for just telling someone to chill the hell out. So please guys, don't send this video to Boone without my permission. I prefer sending it on my own volition or having someone send it with my consent. Anyone sending it without my consent is most likely a spy. If I do publicize this, that's probably mainly if people are not going to give me shit for this, or if Boone actually seems to agree with how I handled this. I just want as little drama as possible, given I've been going through a lot. If you really want to know, just ask me in DMs. I don't want to talk about my issues publicly.
Needless to say, if we did genuinely do something to Gal to cause this reaction, that trauma obviously hasn't lasted very long. Because a year after Gal disappeared, they're back in the spotlight with this FCK Leaks account and trying to dredge back up old drama between they and us. They will never tell anyone why we have beef. They've been rather good about not mentioning the one person who they've affected the most from their shenanigans. But Gal, we know. We just haven't shown everything what you've done because, one, it's not our place to, it should be your victims to speak out against you first, and two, when we did mention that you were behind that account, people labeled us as trying to distract from the FCK logs. However, that was not an attempt to distract from the FCK logs, because those who were actually in the FCK during that time had already mentioned their involvement and apologized. Nezi did, Ali did, and I'm pretty sure I acknowledged that I was once in there, though didn't feel much the need to apologize given I was already being labeled as an innocent party by Gal themselves. However, mentioning who was behind the account was to be a warning that this person should not be trusted with the information they have.
You're trying to deny my point here, Doodles, and yet, like the idiot that you are, you're admitting to it. That is exactly what I've been saying this entire time. That you're saying that this individual shouldn't be trusted because of their past, when the evidence that they have is evidence that I also have, that other people also have, because they too have been invited into the FCK server to gather their own screenshots of it all. You all try to say I'm not credible with my evidence because of my past, even though you can't even be consistent on that. You tried to do the same thing with FCK leaks because Ren was behind it. You're not denying our fucking point here. And you're outright admitting to doing this in the video, that it was an attack at credibility, which is exactly what I said from the very fucking beginning, yet apparently I'm wrong.
In fact, Gal really shouldn't be involved at all in this event because we knew they couldn't handle it. And it doesn't even have to be because of any long-standing grudge between us and Gal. They haven't affected me nearly as much as they've affected my friends after all. I was just some messenger to them. No, I don't think Gal can be trusted in this situation because they have a tendency to hyperbolize or overblow things. They have a tendency to sensationalize things, and they have a tendency to make everything a huge fucking spectacle. Even their best videos, in my opinion, are rife with over-dramatization and them using specific language that puts things in a much harsher light than it ever really should have been in. I remember their videos on Semantics and Junkie, is all I'm saying. To give a specific example of what I mean from within this situation, they did some talking about Nezi Monster and how they apparently enabled Toasty's degenerate behavior. However, this is a particular bee in my bonnet because even within the Fruitcake Club logs themselves, we can see that Nezi Monster was the reason the NSFW chat in the server was pulled. This is something they should know, being the Fruitcake Club leaks.
And yet you don't mention here at all that this was 3 or 4 days after Ben the Looney threatened to expose this same very fucking thing about the FCK. Don't worry, Doodles in a little bit gets into those DMs, and oh fucking boy, are they something great. I can't fucking wait.
But this is something suspiciously left out of the stuff that they talk about. Like, no, I won't say Nezi was a perfect little angel. I said as such in my Brook video. I was the reason Nezi even remembered any of the stuff that they put in the chat. And noodle nudie memes aside, and let's do it like they do in Minecraft aside, I found that Nezi actually was rather critical of Toasty behind the scenes. Nezi drew boundaries for their own server when Toasty posted porn in their chat. Nezi warned Toasty that new servers should have roles and rules in play, probably because of the lack of moderation prior. The last thing that Nezi had to shake Toasty down about was in regards to their rampant pornography spamming. So what the fuck do you mean enabling?
You know what? I think I can answer that. So let's read those DMs. Hello, Toasty. No NSFW in my Discord chat. Oh, my bad. Good morning, by the way. Morning, but could you please remove them from memes, please? I already did. I'm one step ahead of you, Nezi. Thank you. I shall not take away Stardew Valley privileges. What happened in your server? It's a long story, and then he sends an invite to something called Femboy Hooters ACNH. You should probably make set mods and rules, by the way. That's how my server's been keeping order. I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna do modding on this server. Just set up roles and give them to people you trust. Then on August 1st, 5:50 a.m. Nezi says, Toasty, you need to remove Slimmers' NSFW chat. I'm not in charge of that. You'll have to ask the admin. You're friends with the admin. I wouldn't really call me and him friends, but sure, I'll ask him. Just warning you guys, that could become an issue. Interesting way to put that. Could become an issue. We need to talk. You just can't keep running away when you feel like you're losing the argument. Plus, we seriously need to talk about some of the shit you've been doing because you can straight up get arrested. I'm tired of you constantly being selfish and switching sides when it's convenient for you. I'm tired of you brushing aside how people feel because you can't control it. Bullshit. You can, you just choose not to. You ignore everything anyone says and then only notice once they leave. I'm tired of it. We're so inconsiderate of everyone else's feelings, and then when it blows up in your face, you do this shit or play victim. Sound familiar? This seriously needs to stop, or I don't know if we can continue being friends. You seriously hurt me and others because of this, and every time you apologize, you just do it again. You keep getting into drama and expecting us to help you, and then you don't listen to what we say, but keep expecting us to help you. I'm tired. I don't know what you expect me to do anymore. Okay, let's talk about this. You're gonna need to be more specific. 1. You don't listen to any of us when we tell you to stop. Stop sending porn. Stop liking porn on your main. Stop talking about certain things because it makes people uncomfortable. Stop means to fucking stop. 2. Stop throwing yourself into debates on Twitter or between friends and coming to us for something when it backfires on you. 3. Stop using the excuses for when you get called out. Stop deleting everything when you get called out and just leaving everybody. The porn shit needs to stop because some of the shit you're doing is straight up illegal. You know what? You're completely right. Honestly, I should have cut myself off from Twitter and Discord a while ago because it's been toxic for me for ages. I didn't want to leave. Bad blood when I left. Honestly, I wasn't trying to run away from any issues, but just trying to give myself breathing room. But I think it is best if I leave for a good period of time to focus on my real life shit. I understand this is stressful for you, and I understand that my actions have been stupid and hurtful. So I also understand if you don't want to be my friend anymore. I'm fine with that. I also understand when it comes to the whole being insensitive to feelings things, you've also kind of done that to me, where I've told you directly how something you've said made me feel like shit, and then just brushed it off or called me a pussy bitch for being uncomfortable with a joke. But that's just a separate conversation to have. Explain. By the way, this isn't just about being insensitive. I'm trying to help you because you're sexually harassing people, and I don't want you to get ruined like V, because I care about you, and I don't want you going that same road. I appreciate that you're looking out for me, but this sexual harassment is pretty out of left field. Sending porn without permission and getting porn made of a friend when they said to stop is sexual harassment. It's technically an unsolicited picture. Who? Mad Libs and Teddy in particular. And every group chat we've been in together. Are you talking about the Futa thing from January with Mad Libs? Yes. That wasn't cool, Toasty. Not to mention there's a period of time where you kept sending the Sandy Cockfor thing. I thought it was a joke until she bonked me in the head to stop, and I did stop. And I already apologized to her about it, and she said it was fine because I stopped and I didn't share anything. The Teddy thing, me and her are genuinely okay with sending NSFW to each other. Also, yeah, not gonna lie, that was kind of stupid. Which led to Mavi blocking you for a period of time. Mavi is Ellie Momeli, and this means that Ellie Momeli knew a bit more than she let on in her Twitter threads. You still kept the fucking picture, and mentioned it when we were in group calls. Toasty, that is weird. You even asked if you could send it to certain people. Then the first question I get when entering FCK is my breast size. Was it? Yes. While I appreciate that you stopped asking that's weird to ask in the first place, or a picture of my thighs like you did Xena, especially when we had barely known one another. I think the thigh thing was started by Mimi, but if someone was uncomfortable by it, I don't think Xena was weirded out by it. And the fact you still have the picture Madlibs told you not to get people to make in the first place. I actually don't. I don't have a memory of deleting it, but I know I haven't had it in a long time. Then tell her that. I didn't think she'd cared. Toasty. She did tell me she didn't care if I kept it. Having unsolicited porn made of you by a friend is weird. The fact she told you to stop and you kept it for a while anyway. She didn't want it made in the first place and you disregarded that. I stopped when she said. I do remember asking her if she wanted me to delete the only copy, and she said she didn't care as long as I didn't share it. And I didn't disregard it. I thought she was okay with it until she told me directly she wasn't. Sending porn without permission is wrong. What you did to Madlibs was wrong. Yeah, then you asked if you could send it to Xena. Then you kept bringing it up in calls. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. Well, if she didn't like it, then why didn't she say anything? Why does she want to bring it up now, when the topic has been dead for months? Especially after she told me she wasn't bothered by it anymore. 1, because she thought you still had it. 2, so just because she didn't say no, you think what you did was okay? I was teasing her. I would expect her to say, hey, don't tease me like that if she was bothered by it. I didn't think teasing her about it would do any harm. Teasing or not, you were involved in porn made of her. She told you to stop, and you not only accepted the picture, but you kept it. You need to talk to her. Because I didn't think there would be anything wrong with that, especially after she said it was fine for me to accept and keep as long as I didn't share it. I'm willing to. It should not have happened to begin with. That can be seen as pressuring, I guess, but it happened a long time ago, and at that time I did realize that was stupid to do. There is no new lesson I can learn from that. If she's still hurt about it, I'd like to make sure she could at least heal from it. Is there anything else you want to bring up? Other than that, no. You were talking to me about V, and he got in trouble for similar stuff. I don't think you're a bad person, but sending porn without permission and sending it until the person is okay with it can be seen as grooming-esque behavior. V got in trouble for sending porn to minors despite the fact they were uncomfortable with it. Me and Teddy have had a conversation when it comes to shit like that. We both agree that we're fine sending NSFW stuff to each other as long as it's not spammy and really weird and made up with that other thing. I don't think me and blank, I'm presuming Madlibs again, are on talking terms, but if she's fine talking to me about this, then I'll talk to her, but probably not tonight. You can message her, no excuses, just apologize. Does she want to talk to me? I don't know, you'll have to go and see. Nezi Monster and Doodletones seem to think that these DMs clear Nezi Monster, or that it somehow makes a grand correction, as Nezi would put it on Twitter. These DMs do show Nezi Monster getting on to Toasty a couple of times, but around the time I said she did, the DMs show Nezi Monster mentioning the Slammers porn chat and how it could be a problem August 1st at 5:50 a.m. Toasty told the admin July 31st that Nezi wanted the chat deleted. Now, that odd date there is because Nezi is in a different time zone. She's on a completely different continent. So I was correct in my FCK video when I said she didn't say anything about the Slammers porn chat until a few days after Ben threatened the group. She even said it could become a problem. Not that it was already a problem. These DMs also show that she knew a lot more than just about the FCK server. Nezi Monster could accuse Person A, a friend of mine at that time in 2020, of sexual harassment in August of 2020, but not Toasty. She could accuse him of it privately, though. Nezi knew Toasty and Teddy were sending one another porn. She called his actions sexual harassment. In her own words, that it was straight up illegal. And even compared Toasty to V Omega. This was all in 2020. Nezi Monster never came out publicly about this or about Toasty. She could publicly grandstand me to thousands of people for shit less than this. And then say this in the DMs with Toasty, accuse Toasty of sexual harassment privately August 17th of 2020, and then just a few days later accuse a minor of sexual harassment when the victim of this supposed sexual harassment didn't even say that it was sexual harassment. You could publicly accuse a minor of sexual harassment, but not the guy she knows is around a bunch of minors, who is sharing porn with said minors, showing porn to said minors, was sharing porn with Teddy the Draws, and that she accused of sexual harassment in the DMs.
The very worst that Nezi did was partake in the toxic and unhealthy server culture briefly for like a month of them being there. Them joining into the inappropriate server culture was ultimately sporadic. And yeah, Nezi shouldn't have done that. I'm in agreement there. Contrary to what Akumu will have y'all believe, I'm not just running defense for Nezi, because I do agree that they did have things to answer for, but not immediately recognizing there is a problem.
You say this is somehow contrary to what I've been claiming and pushing about this being a defense for yourselves, and yet you state, well, Nezi didn't immediately recognize the issues. No one's saying that's the problem. Not a single fucking person is saying because Nezi Monster didn't immediately recognize the issue, she's at fault here. What's being said here, what's being shown here, even by yourself, because you're an idiot, like the DMs that you just showed us from 2020. Nezi Monster knew a plethora of issues with the FCK, and especially Toasty Vanilla. Could publicly condemn and lambast people and demand people be held accountable for shit less than this. Yet for some reason, stayed quiet on all of this. Not once in 2020, 2021, 2022, or 2023 did Nezi Monster come out about Toasty's sexual harassment, about the things that he was doing that were straight up illegal or in comparison to V Omega. Even if we give Nezi the benefit of the doubt and we pretend those DMs don't fucking exist, let's just pretend they don't exist for just one moment. The FCK did a plethora of shit that they would normally condemn or claimed crossed a line for them. This is just one of the more, I guess, severe and fucking batshit absurd things that was going on in the FCK that was never fucking talked about. The issue isn't Nezi Monster not immediately knowing the problems. It's instead that she knew for years. You fucking know that.
Isn't inherently enabling. And I've looked through those logs, talked with people who spoke with the victims themselves, and I've seen what you two in particular have against them. It feels like y'all are heavily overstating what they've actually done because you have a grudge. Nezi is guilty of some things, yes, but otherwise has answered for the things that they did do. Maybe not specifically and with direct examples, but they have. And
the video that I'm going to be releasing with this one goes much more into depth on exactly what Doodles is saying here, saying that Nezi has taken accountability and talked about these things. Downplaying what you did, or leaving out certain pieces of what you did to make yourself look a little bit better, is not honest by any fucking means.
Victims don't seem to hold any ill will about it, if what I've heard from those talking with the victims is any indicator. But we will have to come back to Nezi throughout this video, of course, because they really like to specifically name them as one of the bigger perpetuators. Also, if I can just be petty for a second, just generally speaking, if you're gonna make an account under the guise of helping victims and exposing actually harmful people, maybe don't use your platform to shill out your personal Twitter account. It just kind of feels like bad optics, gal. Now, as for Akumu, this is where things get particularly frustrating because Akumu's way of approaching the FCK is dangerously generalizing and, if I may speak frankly, kinda dishonest.
Provide an example of me lying or shut the fuck up.
Like, Akumu will focus on presenting things that he can prove, such be the case with bad behavior and sexual posting, the exact thing I explicitly agreed to being the case in my video on Brooke. And yeah, after my Brooke video, I sat down to watch Akumu's vid, and yes, I'll even give him that people did talk shit about him and even conspire against him in the chat. That is also something that is verifiable. But when it requires reading nuance between the lines, or giving more benefit of doubt in his investigations, he tends...
The problem with giving you all the benefit of the doubt is that the evidence shows quite literally what you did. So to give you the benefit of the doubt when it comes to literal fucking screenshots, you have to pretend that those screenshots didn't exist. Like just a moment ago, the screenshots confirming that Nezi knew for months and years about what was going on with Toasty and the FCK. Even if we pretend that those DMs didn't fucking happen, that they didn't exist, and give a very far stretched benefit of the doubt, Nezi still had an idea as to just how fucking bad the FCK was, even outside of all of that. The constant hypocrisy, the constant contradictions, the constant false accusations with no substantial evidence, and the worst part about that all is, they didn't state alleged. They didn't state take this with a grain of salt. They didn't try and state that they could be wrong. No, they treated what they were claiming about me and many other people as fucking fact. Whether it be the doxing accusation, the accusation that I was deleting tweets, sexual harassment accusation, they all ran with that immediately as fucking fact. You want the benefit of the doubt given to you all when you yourselves only give the benefit of the doubt and charitability to people you like, to people you're friends with. Anyone else that's not given to whatsoever. So even if we give the benefit of the doubt in regards to this, there is still a plethora of fucking hypocrisy. But to even give the benefit of the doubt, we have to deny evidence that we can see with our own fucking eyes in this case.
To come up short, takes things as uncharitably as possible, or otherwise disregards it entirely because he can make a much bigger spectacle about it. Such be how Akumu starts presenting the FCK logs to us within his video.
The Fruitcake Club, or the FCK, was a group of art commentary cows, or people that were around the art commentary community. Some of the art community's favorite art-tards, or even the commentary communities, were in this group, like Nezi Monster, Madlibs, Miss Cz, Doodletones, Dumbsville, Toby Majestic, Nani, The Name's Junkie, Fuchsia Butter, Just a Robot, Hopeless Peaches. The abandoned account is Hopeless Peaches. Here's a screenshot showing the account before she changed the username to Abandoned Account, and here's an interaction confirming that the account is Peaches. Teddy the Draws, though her previous account is now deleted, and there are at least 2 other deleted accounts, so it can be difficult to discern who is who, unless she's texting her cringy Teddy noises, or sends screenshots from her DMs, or even from her YouTube channel. There's also Slimmers, Manga Comment, Mimi Diggs, Toasty Vanilla, OMGIJ252, or Jamesy as he's known, LS Mark, Ben the Looney, One Man Show Off, Chaos55T, and Elimo Melly. A couple of others that are less known are Scorchel, Mirage, Hoodie, Wayward Wada, Ard Animation, Omega the Slime, Gary, Aurora, who was Madame's Discord server admin, Moo Shadow, and Kitty259. I'm willing to bet I didn't list everyone there, but that's the majority.
Instead of presenting this list to us with specifically guilty or specifically innocent parties noted, Akumu lumps everyone in together as if he's reading the Epstein list. And this is a huge problem when we're talking about a server's bad behavior and potentially harmful actions towards children within the space.
You mean that I provide screenshots of the people and when they joined as I'm listing the people there? And you are the one comparing it to the Epstein list. I never made that fucking comparison to begin with. But you're subtly trying to suggest that I have. On top of the fact that it is not my job to discern who is most guilty and who is not guilty. It is my job to provide the information. You know what? Keep that in mind. I haven't decided who's guilty and who's not. There's literally a segment from my FCK video where I say that Toasty is one of the most guiltiest people in there. The point I'm making is that I can't entirely blame Toasty. Obviously, he has blame. He made the server. He largely participated in the degeneracy. For fuck's sake, he was gooning in VC. Okay, he's a gooner. It may have been the environment he made in that server. There were many adults here who could have said something. The Name's Junkie almost said something and then backed out of it. He took a step back and said, you know what, nah, just continue. While I'm in agreement to the fact that Toasty was a large contributor to this, I'm not going to only blame him. Doodles just doesn't like the fact that I'm not saying right off the fucking bat, right at the beginning of the video, who's guilty and who's not guilty when I haven't even shown any of the screenshots of what went on. That's literally the beginning of my fucking video.
Like, I've already established the most openly known minors within that chat being Slimmers, Mimi Diggs, and Teddy.
Let's not forget Jamesy, especially considering it was Nezi Monster who knew that Jamesy was 16. She stated it in the collabs on me. That was March of 2020.
These 3 are, if anything, victims of the server, and shouldn't be put alongside those like Ms. Zizi or Toasty, who were active perpetuators of the sexual content the most. Akumu, choosing to not make this distinction and just listing everyone in there like he does, misconstrues the situation to an outsider and paints people like Teddy and Mimi on the same level as those who were inappropriate and dangerous to their health.
Then why is it you're the only person trying to say that about my video? Perhaps that's because when I get into the degeneracy of the server, I established the age differences. But you don't show that. Instead, you're bitching and whining about the beginning of the video where I list all of the people that were in this server, because that was the entire fucking point at the beginning, to list all the people who were in the server. Then when I get into the server's issues, just as I did in the video, I listed who was an adult and who was a minor. Now, just before we dive right in, I want to clarify the ages of everyone involved with the degeneracy at the time this took place, from October of 2019 to mid-2020. Mad Libs was 19 to 20, Fuchsia Butter was 18, Miss Nezi was 21 to 22, Nani was 22, Toby Majestic was 25 or 26, Nezi Monster was 20, Hopeless Peaches was 19 to 20, Toasty Vanilla was 18, and up until April of 2020, he was still in high school. Mimi Diggs was 17, Slimmers was 15, Teddy the Draws was 16, James was 16, LS Mark was 17, Omega the Slime, I believe, was 16, the name's Junkie was 22. Point is, there were many adults and a couple of minors, but you're conflating that as though that's one and the same, and that I never made the distinction of who was an adult and who was a minor. And yet you have the testicular fortitude to try and call me dishonest. And the reason he's so blatantly lying about what was in my video and how my video played out is because he's aware of the fact that his audience don't watch my videos. They're actually on record multiple times refusing to watch my videos. So him talking about my video and playing little clips here and there allows for him to easily be able to twist it as much as he has. And specifically to you, Doodle, Susie, if you don't like me calling you a liar, maybe, here's an idea. Quit fucking lying.
Actually, you could push it further than that and say that Akumu is labeling victims in this situation on the same level as their groomers.
So after outright lying about how my video plays out and leaving out the fact that I separated who was an adult and who was a minor, later on, right before I got into the degeneracy and the main issues with the server, after leaving all of that out, he's going straight to the victim blaming. The sheer mental fucking gymnastics, I have to give credit. It's a neat layout, but nothing about this is honest because the foundation of this very claim isn't true to begin with.
Whether it's intentional or not. And if that notion on its own isn't enough to make your spine crawl, then there's a problem. Akumu also barely makes note of when people join and when people leave, or even how active the people were in that chat. People like LS Mark, Manga Common, Just a Robot, and Dumbsville all shouldn't really even be names brought up because they were all invited into the server and did pretty much next to nothing. Barring Jar, whose few posts were iconic as hell. Now, I'll be fair and say that these lack of distinctions do get rectified a little bit when Akumu starts listing off the ages of everyone in the chat.
Now, just before we dive right in, I want to clarify the ages of everyone involved with the degeneracy at the time this took place, from October of 2019 to mid-2020. Mad Libs was 19 to 20, Fuchsia Butter was 18, Miss Nezi was 21 to 22, Nani was 22, Toby Majestic was 25 or 26, Nezi Monster was 20, Hopeless Peaches was 19 to 20, Toasty Vanilla was 18, and up until April of 2020, he was still in high school. Mimi Diggs was 17, Slimmers was 15, Teddy the Draws was 16, James was 16, LS Mark was 17, Omega the Slime, I believe, was 16, the name's Junkie was 22. Point is, there were many adults and a couple of minors. These people were aware of their ages. It was a topic brought up multiple times on the server.
But
You playing that clip contradicts everything that you were just saying a moment ago. You were saying that I never made any form of distinction to the point that it was almost, if not, victim blaming. Because I didn't immediately right off the bat state who was guilty and who was innocent. Because I didn't immediately provide their ages when I was just listing all of the people that were in the server. Yet you were aware this entire time when I got onto the degeneracy, the most damning thing about the server, I clarified who was an adult and who was a minor. On top of the fact that your complaint about how I don't get into when people joined, the screenshots themselves show when people join the server. You love to talk about dishonest framing, and yet your claim of how my video is dishonestly framed is dishonest to begin with.
again, this is only a half-truth on Akumu's end. Some ages were stated, yes, and I'll be fair that, barring Toasty, everyone in the server whose ages were stated were all below the age of 18. But of the ages that were in there, Teddy, Weta, Alexo, Snailu, Jamesy, Pollen Patch, and Mimi Dix were the only ones whose ages I know for sure were talked about in the chat.
You just listed 7 minors and admitted that their ages were stated in the fucking chat. And what gets really rich is this next fucking part.
People like Fuchsia, Nani, Peaches, Nezi, and others that Akumu names and gives ages about weren't actually touched upon within the chat.
All of whom were adults, all of whom were public figures that everyone knew were adults. Your argument really is, oh well, 7 minors had their ages stated in the chat, but the adults, their ages were never stated in the chat. Therefore, there needs to be more nuance to this, as if the minors there didn't know these people were public fucking figures, YouTubers, that on average were 19 to 20, if not older.
Furthermore, at least one of the ages Akumu states in the section is just wrong. Like, I can't confirm the rest of the ages. I got a few asking around, and some were rough answers, so I'll give Akumu what little benefit of doubt I can. But returning back to the point that I spoke about earlier, Nezi Monster was 19 when he joined the Fruitcake Club, and was that age for the majority of the time that he was in there. Nezi's birthday is June 12th, and he's 23 as of scripting.
Nezi Monster, whilst in the FCK server, was 19 and 20. But sure, at the beginning, when they were invited, they were 19. 1 year fucking difference as to what I said, and I was wrong on that. But do you really think your pedantic fucking complaint really changes the overall point that a 19-year-old was aware of the fact that a 15-year-old was being shown porn, and was aware that there was a chat dedicated to the porn drawn by a 15-year-old? Your 1 year correction doesn't change jack shit. That's usually how the SCC functions. They make these tiny pedantic complaints over small details that don't actually change anything. This is largely what Ephraim does. They think that because they got you on a small tiny detail that doesn't change a fucking thing of your overall point, that they've somehow combated your main fucking point.
He's turning 24 this year, so doing just a little math, we would find that Nezi would have turned 20 only a mere week before his last known active post in the server on June 25th.
You do realize that screenshot further confirms that Nezi Monster was aware of a 15-year-old being in the server. I'm seriously starting to wonder whether you guys actually think ahead. Were you just rushing this video to the point that you couldn't realize exactly what you were putting in it?
And I want to stress the activity because we do know that Nezi was relatively inactive in there for a month or two after the fact. The NSFW chat was deleted in August after all.
Why don't you make the clarification that Slimer's NSFW chat was deleted in August? Are you going to inform your audience that porn was sent in every fucking chat, especially the main general chat that the minors had access to?
Now, what does this change? You, as the strawman I am creating for this rhetorical question, may be asking, and to that I repeat, framing. See, when presenting information, it's important to realize that how you interpret and present your evidence and information is just as important as what it is you are saying while presenting it. This was something I told Akumu a year ago in the context of it not being a good idea to just rampantly antagonize people you want an apology from, or to see take accountability for their actions. Something he had a frankly awful habit of doing some years back under his Noodle Cup Boy alias. Which, yes, for those uninitiated, was Akumu. It's not really exposing him, he's never really hid that fact. I just have to clarify these things, because when dealing with someone with alt accounts, you just kinda need to make sure, you know?
It's funny that you talk about framing and how my framing is dishonest or flawed, even though I've explained numerous times how your own complaints make no fucking sense or don't change a thing. So ultimately, this was an entire waste of time so far. But I do find this interesting. You state that I had messaged Nezi and antagonized. How is correcting a false sexual harassment accusation antagonism? I went to Nezi to clear that accusation up, and she later lied about me doing so. Of course, you don't mention that context as to why I messaged Nezi Monster on the Noodle Cup Boy account, because that would inform your audience as to what prompted it. And you can't have that, because then more people would know about what Nezi had done.
Anyway, I'm sidetracking. Back to my point. It looks a lot worse to an uninitiated audience member to hear that a 20-year-old was being sexual around a 17-year-old than it would be to hear that a 19-year-old was so. It almost paints a particularly pedophilic undertone when otherwise you would be dealing with a still maturing younger adult goofing around with someone within their general age range. Not that it's exactly excusing it in this context, as sexual imagery was still posted where it shouldn't be, and as the adult in the situation, Nezi should have been more careful about that. But, and maybe it's a personal value of mine, but 18-year-old and 19-year-olds are still going to be kinda stupid sometimes. Like, as long as they aren't actively hurting others or breaking the law, I tend to go a little easier on them myself, depending on the circumstance.
That argument would work if it wasn't for a certain detail that we saw in the screenshots your dumbass put in the video. In 2020, at the same time that the FCK shit was taking place, such as Slamurs being shown porn along with the other minors, V Omega had been exposed, or it had come out that V Omega was showing porn to minors. Nezi referenced this fact in the DMs with Toasty Vanilla, clearly knowing that V, as an adult, showing porn to minors was not a good thing. So explain to me how Nezi knew what V had done in regards to showing porn to minors was bad, yet didn't know Toasty and the others that were spamming porn in the FCK server showing porn to especially Slamurs. How did she not know that that was wrong, but knew that when V Omega was doing it, it was wrong then? Or are you saying it was in August of 2020 that it clicked in her head that that behavior was weird? Is that going to be your argument, your excuse for this?
Of course, though, that's just my value, and you can take that or leave it as you may. Morality ultimately is subjective at the end of the day. My point is, because I'm getting a little long-winded again, that you need to better present your shit. You need to be able to present your evidence in a way that's understandable to your audience and doesn't leave room for them to have to fill in the gaps with whatever more extreme examples they can come up with. The less your audience has to do your work interpreting things, the better your points become. There's less room for misunderstandings and less room for assumptions to be made. This is also why you'd have to acknowledge the when these ages were stated and who was all a part of those conversations, because commonly within chats, some conversations will be overlooked or missed unless you're someone who's willing to rake through chats obsessively or do often enough backreading, which, if you're anything like me, you probably don't. Especially if it's something like a contextless no-mic chat. There is nuance to these things, is the point, and that's very important when you want to make very serious allegations like Akumu is making, and when you're presented with uncertainties or holes in the story, such being the case surrounding the roughly 7 deleted users in that chat as an example, then you need to do a better job at giving some benefit of doubt or otherwise not making wild assertions about a person's character.
You go on and give this speech about nuance and charitability and benefit of the doubt, yet you haven't shown a single time that I was actually wrong. Your complaint about my video was completely voided by my video itself, especially in regards to the, well, he doesn't say right at the beginning of the video who's guilty and who's not. The fuck? That's not for me to decide. I'm not judge, jury, and executioner. I know that you all think you are. That's why you're used to that. But that's not me. You've yet to point out a single time that I've lied. The only correction you have made so far is that Nezi was 19, but that doesn't change a fucking thing at all. Because Nezi knew in 2020, as the FCK shit was taking place, that it was wrong for an adult to be sharing porn with a minor. Conveniently, though, that was an adult that was outside of the FCK server. The 7 deleted accounts don't change what we can see in the server, what people can see with their own fucking eyes. Nuance can't magically make the screenshots and what happened change.
Which is another thing we should really talk about, isn't it? Yeah, so Akumu seems to love making wild assertions about someone's character. In fact, the only reason he was as obsessed about the Fruitcake Club logs and exposing them to the internet wasn't because of, like, any victims or anything. No, by his own admission, it was to show how fake, dishonest, hypocritical, and sanctimonious the ArtCC is. Yes, I know he also throws LARPy in there, but come on. Coming from Light Yagami over here, I don't want to hear it from him. Plus,
nothing of what I've gone over is a wild character assertion. Many of the people in the FCK went on to grandstand, condemn, and demand other people be held accountable for shit less than what they've done, or for the exact same shit they've done themselves. Let's look at Nezi Monster, right? Demanding other people be held accountable, calling other people liars, throwing false doxing accusations. Here's a perfect instance of the sanctimonious hypocrisy. Nezi and Heaton want to grandstand me and accuse me of trying to dox Slamurs, despite the fact that they're well aware that it's false. Yet they have no problem with the fact that Lyle got a 15-year-old's information and called his school with the admitted intent to ruin his fucking life. I've yet to see Nezi grandstand Lyle about that. I've yet to see Heaton grandstand Lyle about that. And Nezi and Heaton aren't the only two examples I can provide. How about Ponder Sprocket getting onto me for deleting Slamurs' comment, and yet she hid my account for commenting on a video about me? How about Fuchsia Butter, who got onto me for deleting comments months late, by the way, and then went on to delete comments himself. How about the FCK getting onto me for deleting tweets, yet they've went on to delete tweets themselves, when I only ever deleted one tweet. But me deleting that one tweet, even though I shared a screenshot of it, that was me trying to hide it. My entire series breaks down how people like you and your friends and you try and get onto other people for shit you have no problem doing yourself, or when you've done shit far fucking worse. So there's no character assertion here, it's a repeated pattern of behavior that not only my series shows, but this video in and of itself shows. And in regards to the Light Yagami thing, you almost had it, you almost realized it. The entire fucking point of me LARPing as Light Yagami was to mock your community. I know, it must be shocking, or maybe you can't realize that because then you'd have to have some form of self-reflection and realize that the entire time the joke's been on you. And that's a tough thing to realize. I get that. But the first thing that I thought of when I saw your community, the SCC and the ArtCC in 2020, actually 2019 to be specific here, was Light Yagami and Merge Zamazu. A bunch of losers that were trying to have some sort of effect and control various things, painting their intentions as sanctimonious and good when really they didn't give a damn as much as they claimed to have, and delusionally trying to dish out some form of fucking justice onto everyone else. What does that sound like again? Who was the group of people demanding someone be held accountable on a call, berating and yelling at them? Oh, wait, no, the SCC did that with Lio recently. Well, not recently, a few months ago.
If you do this bullshit again, we're gonna bring this to Lio, or you're gonna have to deal with me again. Do you understand me?
But I personally feel like, I'm not saying it needs to be right now, but I feel like you, at some point, once Key and Tippy are like emotionally better, you need to like hold them accountable. You need to just go up to them and be like, hey, you guys need to be actively working to improve yourselves, you know?
No, they need to be actively accountable right now. Something that I've noticed in this community is that Tippy and Key tend to be held with kids' gloves. You don't need to go down on them hard, but you need to hold them accountable. And this is to learn a lesson. I've learned this lesson the hard way. A lot of us have learned this lesson the hard way. Don't go gallivanting around with your armor when you have nothing to fight for.
And one more thing, I'd rather LARP as Light Yagami any fucking day than ever picture myself shitting in a diaper so I can jack off. That is insanely pathetic.
It's generally such a nothing point. Like, oh noes, we're cringe, the horror. Whatever. Joking aside, the point is he wants to make a point about dishonesty and hypocrisy, claiming that he's not trying to portray himself as a morally virtuous person, but merely that he wants to tear down the facade that the rest of us are. However, in order to tear down that notion, the individuals in question have to think of themselves in that way first. And Akumu kinda never proves that any of these people do, to my knowledge. I don't know, there's roughly like 30 some odd videos on his channel about this situation, so maybe I'm wrong.
You haven't even watched the entirety of the series, and yet you're claiming I haven't proved that in my series, but you haven't watched it.
Uh-oh, retard alert! Retard alert, class!
I think I figured out your problem here. I think this might be it. You haven't seen the evidence of my series because you haven't watched it. I know. Really shocking. What a revelation.
I won't discount the possibility. However, if it's his specifically focused FCK video that was supposed to prove this, it would actually help to provide evidence and examples of the art commentators being holier than thou for those who do not want to watch approximately 16 hours of one YouTuber talking more or less the same few talking points for 4 years. Dude has frankly dedicated his channel to this topic. It's insane. Like, sure, we critique, we offer advice, and we do try to be more constructive in our videos when compared to some other forms of commentary, but that doesn't mean we see ourselves with any sort of superiority. I'm pretty sure if you ask any of us, most, if not all of us, would say that we have had a particularly egregious past or have done things that we're not exactly proud of. I have definitely spoken at lengths about my life of regret, and God knows I will never be finished. We will say that Akumu tends to act in bad faith, but you don't need to see yourself as morally superior to call that out, because we can all act in bad faith sometimes.
Your excuses and copium to the side, you have not yet explained how I've been bad faith at all. If your argument is because I'm talking about people I didn't like beforehand, that would apply to you on several videos that you would probably say aren't bad faith. No one said this when Peaches was talking about Camila Cuevas. On top of the fact that even if I was bad faith, yet none of you can actually explain how I am. You just throw that word out there and expect it to stick. That doesn't change evidence. I know that you wish that it did, that you tell yourselves that it does. Hence you and Lio and his audience and your audience's insistence on claiming that I'm bad faith. I don't hate to be the bearer of bad news. I quite enjoy this. It doesn't change a fucking thing.
That doesn't make it any less bad when you notice someone else is doing so. We might say Akumu is a dick, but that's because he is. He kind of wants to portray himself as such, so it's not like he wouldn't take that on the chin. Hell, some people will even call him a liar, and that again doesn't need to be called out by a morally virtuous person if we're to go by the logic of Akumu himself.
Since some people could call me a liar and you call me dishonest, write an example. I'm waiting. It shouldn't be hard.
That is unless Akumu wants to try and backtrack and say that he is morally superior to the rest of us, but then that would go against his stated intentions because he says that he doesn't believe he is, and he's been calling us all liars pretty constantly.
Yes, I've called you a liar for lying, but maybe I can help you with this. If you don't want to be called a liar, and you don't like that you're being called a liar, maybe, hear me out on this, just hear me out this one time, you shouldn't lie. I know. That's crazy. It's a crazy idea. I know. But maybe if you weren't lying like you've lied so far in this video and have tried to twist things, maybe people wouldn't call you a liar. You know what? I have just the example. Maybe if you didn't deny your diaper fetish for several years, despite the blatant evidence, people wouldn't call you a liar.
It'd get contradictory really fast. In any case, I can only for certain speak for myself, but I'm pretty sure that these people who Akumu claim to see themselves as morally superior most likely don't actually, and would also be willing to admit to making some really bad judgment calls or stupid and shitty, maybe even hurtful mistakes in the past. I would bet that these people would claim to be flawed individuals who can occasionally be rude, mean, or spiteful. So making this your mission statement without making that point clear and concisely kinda doesn't work.
You haven't even seen my series. You've watched one video by your own admission, my FCK server video. You haven't seen the rest of the series, so you speaking on it just doesn't work. It goes nowhere. It's kaputs. It's empty. These people that have made their apologies always leave shit out that they're aware of. Take, for instance, Peaches, who left out the fact that she knew Slammers was a minor. She actually admitted this the same day she made her Twitter thread, in the call with a Crystal Flame and Lio Convoy.
Slammers was that then. I think I knew their age as 16 or 17.
Yeah, but you were also dealing with the after effects of being groomed because you were still in contact with the guy who groomed you. But this is what, right before the door stuff happened?
How about Nezi Monster, who has released 2 twitlongers that are extremely flawed, the first one flat out lying, and has lied in general about the sexual harassment accusation for 4 years, downplaying it to a simple mistake, an accident. How about Fuchsia Butter, who lied in the thread released June 9th of 2020, something that I also cover in my series. How can you apologize for something if you're lying about it or downplaying it? How about Fuchsia Butter's most recent post about the FCK, where Fuchsia tries to lie and blame Toasty Vanilla for things Toasty had fucking nothing to do with? If these people don't think that they're better and enjoy the fact that they look better to everybody else, why can't they just admit to their mistakes outright, with no excuses, with no dishonesty, and with no downplaying it? Why is it that they want to keep their wrongdoings a secret? Why is it that these people don't admit to the fact that they've lied about other people? Why is it that these people avoid trying to admit to the fact that they've lied about people or falsely accused people, knowing that it was false? Nezi Monster again. Unless, of course, because it contradicts the morally virtuous act and facade that they wear on YouTube to their subscribers. Otherwise, why not just admit to it? You state, oh, well, these people have admitted to certain things, and yet I can cite several of these people from the FCK and the art commentary community that either downplay what they've done, deny what they've provably done, or lie about what they've provably done, and don't want what they've provably done to be known by everybody, because it contradicts the facade that they put on to everybody else. It's why you, for example, denied your diaper fetish for fucking years, because you didn't want people to know that you jacked it to the idea of yourself shitting in a diaper, because you want to maintain a certain image, knowing that you've done things and do things that contradict that image. That is the moral facade. That is the virtuous act, the sanctimonious hypocrisy.
You're not being a particularly good salesman if this is the angle you're trying to shoot at. Now, back to the note of calling Akumu a liar, as some of you have been doing, there probably should be evidence as such if you're going to call him out on that, and that goes for any of you doing so. Now, personally, I won't say that I think Akumu is a strict liar. Lying has a particular motivation behind it, and unlike Akumu, I will not make an argument about his motivations without concrete proof of intent to back it up. But I will say I believe he is dishonest with his framing of argumentation and information, deliberately or not, and that on its own should be taken note of going forward whenever Akumu presents information to the public.
So you can't prove that I've actually lied like you all have continuously insisted that I have. You can't actually prove that, so your cope is, well, he's dishonest in his framing, and your examples that you've given so far, and this dishonesty of framing is disproven by the video you're taking issue with in and of itself. Your first complaint was over the fact that I didn't decide who was guilty and not guilty at the beginning of the video when I was listing everyone, as if your expectations and the way you make videos is the way I'm going to make videos. And this doesn't inherently prove I'm dishonest either. It's a nothing complaint. Then you complain that I don't make any sort of nuanced indication of adult and minor right at the beginning of the video, when I literally do that when I get into the most damning part of the server. I do it right before I get into all of that. So your complaints are completely meaningless. Your claims of dishonest presentation don't prove any dishonesty in the framing by any fucking means. Ironically, it's you who tried to say I was victim blaming because I didn't state the ages at the beginning of the video.
I mean, in general, you should always be willing to ask questions with everyone, myself included, because I can get things wrong too. But we can talk about the commentary audience's tendency to shrug off the need for skepticism in a later chapter. Point is, work needs to be double-checked sometimes, because a commentator won't always catch issues that they have within their own script. I mean, you kind of have to have at least some confidence in what you're saying, else why would you say it, you know? But when you can easily disprove the smaller things that Akumu says just by the notion of being in a public space...
We, however, had a longtime server member give us access to the logs that Akumu will not release.
Okay, so these DMs are from his Lioman2 account, which he has now completely deleted.
Then it shows that he's, at the very least, careless in what he's actually presenting to the public himself. Like, complicated misinformation, or you had to be theirs is one thing, you know? You can misinterpret things, or just get things wrong without being careless or disingenuous about it all. Like, it's one thing to be wrong, but this was something that Akumu could have easily double-checked in both his own DMs and utilizing those within Senate that were feeding him information. And I know that Akumu did go on to correct that statement. I'm only using it as one such example of the way that he approaches discussion. But it was such a weirdly easy thing to double-check, and it shows me, personally, at just how little he actually cared about anything other than trying to win a situation or pitch a particular narrative.
This is coming from the same individual who not only lied about what Alex the Critic's video entailed, which I can link that video down below, and then tried to backtrack it, who not only lied about what was going on between the conversation on YouTube between me and Alex, so that you could call Alex the Critic a hypocrite. The same individual who denied knowing that there were minors in the server when you knew Slimmers was in there and knew that Slimmers is a minor. You watched videos that told you that in 2019 and 2020. And this list can keep going with your own either flat-out lies or complete inaccuracies that you could have double-checked. And again, this is something that the SEC, a tactic that they rely on. They think that if they can get you on tiny little things that don't actually change your overall point, they're somehow actually responding to your overall point. Again, Ephraim is a perfect example of this. He tries to nitpick my video over the tiniest thing, and yet can't actually address the main fucking point that I made towards him. And it's the same thing with Doodles here. It's these tiny nitpicks of certain things that actually change nothing in the grand scheme of things. Can't prove that I've lied, admit that you can't, so say that I'm dishonestly framing. Then say that I'm spreading rampant misinformation, and yet your main example here is something I corrected immediately. And yet there are lies that you have told, Doodles, that you have not corrected.
The other thing that would tell me that is how he reads into other people's actions and motivations. Within the same video the prior flub-up was seen, we are shown a screenshot of Akumu's DMs with Lio, where Akumu makes the assertion that Nezi told Toasty to delete the NSFW chat in fear of Ben the Looney leaking shit. Now, here's an obvious question no one is asking. How does Akumu know this is the reason why? He makes such a claim as if this was definitely the case, but he's only making that assertion off of an assumption. Probably due to circumstances around that time, but not because of anything concrete, as evidenced by the fact that he doesn't show anything concrete.
You say I don't show anything concrete. That's a little odd. Because you said that you watched my FCK server video and you've played clips from it. So did you miss this part? And until July, when Ben the Looney was threatening the group, when their Toby drama was going on, that Nezi Monster told Toasty to delete Slimer's porn artwork chat. How convenient. This is also a fact that I've gone over in 2 other different videos. The Nezi Synod call. On July 28th of 2020, after the FCK kicked out Ben the Looney, Teddy the Draws told the FCK in their VC text chat that Ben the Looney was sending people after Toasty Vanilla. Ben the Looney had screenshots from the FCK server showing the porn they sent into the server and the server chats that minors had access to. The fact that they were tagging some of the minors to show them porn, and that they had a chat dedicated to Slimer's NSFW artwork. Something that Nezi mentioned before in this same call, and evidence that Ben shared with me around this same time. 3 days later, July 31st, and Nezi told Toasty Vanilla to remove the porn chats. For months, none of them said anything about it. The very common behavior of sharing porn in the server when it had multiple minors in it, spamming it even. And yet something was only said and done when they found out that it might become public knowledge and pose a threat to the group. And the video on Toby. So I will yet again autistically break this down for Doodletones. Teddy the Draws goes to the group and tells them Ben the Looney plans on retaliating, on going after the group, and especially Toasty. And I spoke with Ben the Looney around this time. Some of the evidence that he gave me were screenshots proving that there was a chat dedicated to Slimer's pornography. So that was one of the things that he intended on exposing. We know that for a fact. Now with that in mind, 3 or 4 days later, Nezi Monster goes to Toasty in the DMs and says that Toasty should delete the Slimer's NSFW porn chat, and that it could become an issue. Not that it already was an issue. Not that it was weird, but that it could become an issue. Oh, I wonder what that could be referring to. This could become an issue a few days after someone's threatening to expose that same very thing. Just a coincidence.
All right, move on. Nothing to see here. Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
This is why I will frequently call him a bad faith actor, a notion I find he will frequently scoff at the mere idea of. But it is important to approach these kinds of things in good faith.
It's important to approach these things with good faith. Interesting. You know what's really ironic here? You were just getting onto me for a detail that could easily be fact-checked, and then you got onto me for claiming that Nezi Monster went to Toasty because Ben the Looney was threatening the group, saying that I had no evidence of this. And yet you have the logs of the FCK server. You went through all of them to produce your autistic fucking sheet. So you would have no doubt seen that Teddy informed the group that Ben was threatening to expose them. Yet you don't mention that. You don't show that. You could have said, well, this is what Akumu was referring to because he didn't show it to Lyle Convoy in the DMs. But you didn't do that. Instead, you implied that I'm wrong and that I don't provide any fucking evidence for it when you also have the logs, Susie. And yet you want to talk about me having bad faith intentions and that you need to address these things with good faith intentions. Really? Okay.
It's important that when making accusations that you be open to the idea that these people could just be ignorant, so as to not accidentally make a much more scathing false accusation. A notion that I'll even extend to Lyo, as he probably shouldn't have focused so hard on trying to paint Akumu as controlling a narrative without concrete proof either. Yeah, after watching some videos over and kinda sitting on the fact Lyo did that, I can concede to that being another rather valid point against him. It's important to be able to approach a conversation civilly and respectfully, so as a discussion or debate can actually ensue. You'll find that arguing in good faith can lead to both parties coming to a discussion to properly and honestly talk things out, maybe even come to a mutual understanding. Going and completely disregarding a person's rights, dignity, or autonomy is actually really bad for criticism in most cases, as people will be quick to look at the motivations behind a critic's actions as disingenuous or trying to spin a narrative. Admittedly, I do find that I believe as such with Akumu because he will approach a conflict with a specific end goal in mind, and specifically frame an individual in a certain light that reaches that end result.
I can't be framing something if the behavior shows exactly what I'm describing. It's not how that works. I know that because I'm showing that behavior and it's inconvenient for you all, and especially because you don't want that facade gone, that you want to paint it as such. But me showing that behavior and explaining how it's a repeated pattern of behavior is not framing.
It's confirmation bias through and through.
Confirmation bias requires that the evidence not support what I'm saying, and it does. You haven't even been able to show us a single time that my evidence doesn't support what I've said. You haven't shown a single time that I've lied. In fact, you admitted that you couldn't show me lying. The closest you got to showing that I didn't have evidence to support my claim in regards to Nezi Monster, which I'm assuming is your basis for this confirmation bias claim, you fell short on.
And nobody is questioning that. For other instances of what I mean on Akumu's end, because I don't want to just say this is the case without my own evidence to back it up. I don't want to be a hypocrite after all, so I'll give you a few other examples that I've been able to catch from at least one of his videos about this new situation. I won't be able to go over every video or everything wrong. I mean, I probably could. I have made longer videos, but to be honest, I don't really want to spend the extra time going over all 16 plus hours of content. Y'all have waited long enough for this response already anyway, and I'm not really out here to do some sort of smear campaign against Akumu despite his pushed narrative. I do, however, want to demonstrate my particular concerns with Akumu as a narrator and as a critic, and make my own case on why you should look at what he says with a bit more skepticism and nuance. Starting with
server, wherein Peaches made a joke about it. Now, there's some context here that needs to be highlighted,
Yeah, what's the
and that's the
context?
fact that Peaches was groomed for 7 years. Even at the time
What the fuck does that have to do with the FCK server? Are you saying the person who groomed her was in the FCK server?
this all happened, they were still being manipulated by said groomer. So even if Peaches was 100% aware that there were kids in the server,
What does this have
which
to do with the
personally
FCK
I
server?
doubt, this is something Peaches had normalized by their groomer. Peaches didn't even know any of what that creep was doing was suspicious until Cosmodor got called out later that year. That being said, this isn't something they've repeated and have also disavowed. I think I've made it clear that I'm always going to keep nuance in mind when dealing with stuff like this. If it was Peaches sending porn to children, or speaking to them sexually like Nix and Jackie, we'd be having a different conversation.
what does Peaches' grooming have to do with the FCK? This is a card that Akumu has also played against me directly when addressing the specific roleplay that has been used as leverage to call me a pedophile. And it's, at best, deflection.
The deflection is bringing up the fact that you were groomed when anyone talks about your degeneracy, acting as though you being groomed is what resulted in you being a degenerate, when we all know that you were a degenerate before you were groomed. The deflection is bringing up the fact that Peaches was groomed as very much needed context when her groomer has nothing to do with the FCK and wasn't even in the server.
See, the important thing to realize is what the effects of grooming actually are, being a normalization to things that otherwise should not be normalized. It makes the victim more open to partaking in sexualized behavior that would not be appropriate for the situation. When Aaron was in the FCK, they were still together with an abusive significant other, someone who I would presume was deliberately sexual and controlling, and this was, according to Lyo, going on for multiple years. This would mean that, for years, the act of being sexual around someone who was probably too young to be around that behavior was totally normalized, and Aaron, as the victim of grooming, would not have been able to process the situation that they were in as a bad thing.
Two problems with that. First, Peaches made a joke about how it could be used to expose them. So she clearly had some kind of idea as to what it was and the fact that it was bad. And secondly, why is it Peaches could publicly condemn other people on her platform for doing the same exact shit, but never anything to do with the FCK? If she didn't know that it was wrong, then why is it on YouTube she's stating that when other people do it, it's wrong? Almost like it's an act, a moral front.
That's what it has to do with the FCK. And spoilers, that's what mine had to do with the roleplay I did, playing as an 8-year-old.
Slight problem with that. You were into those kinks before you met your groomer. By your own admission, by your own words, by your own video, you met Alex November 22nd of 2014. Anyone can look at your fucking DeviantArts and see that you were into some degenerate shit before you met Alex. You were into many of the degenerate kinks in 2013 that you would do in the Kirby roleplay, so saying that your groomer pushed you into those kinks is ridiculous because you were into those kinks before you met your groomer.
It's almost like behavior is affected by your environment or something, but we'll get more into my story a bit later, as it is slightly different.
Toasty Vanilla was the person in charge of that server and gave no rules or safeguards to protect children in that server. I'd love to see accountability directed towards him, please.
Toasty Vanilla was 18. Peaches was older than he was. Nezi was older than he was. Nezi Monster was older than he was. Yes, he made the server. Yes, he participated in it. But you and Peaches love to use age on other people to talk about how they should know better because they're older. Yet now you're completely contradicting that and saying that only Toasty should be blamed? Really? Really, Lio?
This is a deliberate straw man from Akumu.
A straw man is when you make up an argument and then respond to it. When talking about Peaches and people taking issue with Peaches while defending and lying for Peaches, Lio brought up Toasty Vanilla and said, "I'd like to see accountability pointed at him, please." Clearly trying to divert the conversation away from Peaches and to Toasty Vanilla. He did the same thing with Fuchsia Butter. Me pointing out that that's him doing that is not a straw man. Me pointing out that he's contradicting his known argument of using people's age against them and how they're older and should know better is pointing out hypocrisy. Neither of those are any way, shape, or form a fucking straw man.
Lio is not saying that only Toasty should get heat for the FCK server. He is, however, alluding to the fact that there seems to be less of a focus on Toasty as the one more or less running the place than there is on people like Peaches, Nezi, or Nezi.
The difference here is that I haven't seen a Twitter thread or a YouTube video from Toasty Vanilla denying or lying about this. The only thing that I've seen is Toasty Vanilla in DMs talking with other people. And I've also heard through word of mouth and rumor that Toasty Vanilla has been talking with various other fucking people. I have not seen a single thing publicly from Toasty Vanilla regarding anything to do with the FCK or just in general. People are talking about Toasty, but they're going to be talking about him less when you have people like Fuchsia, Peaches, Lio, and whoever else that's talking about this situation, either lying or trying to downplay what happened. That is why Peaches and Lio became part of the main topic, because Lio decided to lie for Peaches. This is something he admitted to on fucking stream. And he's was a 20k YouTuber.
We know now, after looking through the logs, that there were people in there that Toasty knew were as young as 12 or 13 years old. Specifically, the 13-year-old was the one that Toasty made all sorts of reverse lolly jokes about, knowing they were so young. That is on Toasty.
Yeah, I don't think anyone disagrees with you there, champ.
And while yes, I did earlier allude to being typically more lenient with 18 and 19-year-olds, one, I specified as long as they weren't hurting people, and given how much I know about the victims of the FCK, Toasty did. And two, Akumu isn't as lenient. Again, we'll have to come back to this a little later, but the fact that Toasty isn't being given the same treatment as Nezi, Nezi, or Peaches...
I already know where this is going. When you say same treatment, are you referring to more videos getting onto Toasty? I can't exactly do that when there's no video or Twitter thread from Toasty trying to lie and downplay the events. There also hasn't been someone who's tried to defend him either, so what exactly are you expecting me to talk about? Because what I have been talking about is the lying and downplaying from Lio, Peaches, Nezi Monster, and so on. What am I supposed to talk about in regards to Toasty? I can't talk about something he hasn't done yet.
Is worth noting. Like, yeah, Akumu, I'm aware that you've already made a video on Toasty, but you have, like, 4 or 5 videos on Fuchsia, 4 or 5 videos on Nezi.
I've interacted with Fuchsia Butter and Nezi Monster more than I've interacted with Toasty Vanilla throughout the years. That means that there's more for me to talk about in regards to that. On top of the fact that Fuchsia Butter and Nezi Monster have responded to me more times than Toasty Vanilla ever has throughout the years. So there's more to talk about.
You have 2 videos on me in this situation, and the first video isn't even really relevant to the FCK situation itself.
If your argument is I haven't talked about Toasty's involvement in the FCK enough, despite the fact that I detailed much of it in the FCK server video, then why are you citing a video on you that has nothing to do with the FCK? Because that video isn't even in my playlist on my series. That's a separate thing. My video on you that is to do with the FCK is because you were making this video and I was being told what this video entailed. I was being given information about what your impending response would be. That means that you're making a response. Something, guess what, Toasty hasn't done.
I'm just saying, if we want consistency and others so badly, then please be consistent yourself.
You haven't actually explained where I've been inconsistent. You cited that I've talked about Fuchsia and Nezi and you more, but leave out the why. I've interacted with Fuchsia, Nezi, and you a lot more. My videos on Fuchsia are responses to either videos on me or statements about me, until I compiled all of the interactions that happened between me and Fuchsia because it went on for months. Let's look at Nezi Monster. Nezi Monster made a video on me, so I made a video back. Then there's the sexual harassment accusations. And so I documented Nezi Monster lying about that throughout the years. Because I would bring it up, she'd make a response about it, not entirely being honest, and then I would cover that. And then eventually, I compiled it all together for videos. In the case with you, I spoke about your degeneracy because you weren't being honest about it, trying to push the idea that you were groomed into being a degenerate when you were a degenerate before you had been groomed. Or my most recent video talking about you, which is your statements on the FCK and the issues I took with it. I've interacted with you all more, therefore I can actually make a video detailing that. I've hardly interacted with Toasty Vanilla, on top of the fact that I can't make a video taking issue with Toasty Vanilla's response if he hasn't fucking made one. Were you dropped on your head when you were born? Can you not notice the distinct differences in that? Fuchsia and Nezi have responded to me or made statements about me or have made statements about the FCK. And those are the videos you're citing as, well, why don't you make one on Toasty? When I can't do so if Toasty hasn't made a fucking video yet, or even a Twitter thread.
And then there's what he has to say about specifically me.
But a single example may not be enough to convince people of Akumu's smearing attempts being an obvious ploy. So here's another one. Akumu has been regularly spreading an RP Susie did when they were a couple of months past 18. An RP Susie herself did not make sexual, but the other party did. In doing her research to properly address this yet again, Susie delved into her old logs and found out she had been groomed.
The problem with this is, and Lio no doubt knows the fucking problem. If he's watched Doodletones' video, he knows the exact problem with this. No one's questioning or denying or even making fun of Susie for having been groomed. But that's the direction they're going with this to shield criticism for the degen roleplay. Doodletones was drawing age regression in diaper shitting art in 2013. They did not meet their groomer, Alex, until the 22nd of November in 2014. So they were already a degenerate before the grooming took place. The roleplay with the character that's described as physically 8 years old was not with their groomer, Alex. It was with Kirby. Doodletones has continuously lied and said that they were made uncomfortable by this roleplay, but they returned on an alt account to continue it. Nothing about that is smearing. All of that is true. It would be smearing if the roleplay didn't happen and I photoshopped it. I didn't. It would be smearing if I lied about any of the details I just gave you, but I didn't. You can go watch Susie's video down below.
There is a lot of things to address in this clip. Akumu's understanding of my story is somewhat misconstruing and sumptuous, and the fact people have been running with it baffles me to no end, so let's tackle each of these points individually. Point 1. No one is making fun of the grooming, but that is the direction they're taking it to defend themselves from the degen roleplay. False. I say as I point to your comment that you're being quick to assume that I was going to call people doing so victim blaming told me that you wanted to make fun of the grooming. With that said, I do have to wonder how much Akumu actually cares about the victimization of minors there, when he holds no problem wanting to make fun of me as a victim of grooming by his own words. I have never said that you actually have been making fun of the grooming itself, just that it seemed like you wanted to.
Except for the fact that nowhere in my comment was I making a defense for making fun of the grooming or anything like that, just that I knew that was going to be the angle you and your audience would take. So unless you have some kind of reading comprehension issues, you shouldn't have made that claim to begin with.
Because why would you care so much about how I would react to it if you weren't planning on doing so?
That's not even close to what I was saying. So let me again, for the third fucking time, autistically break it down. I was saying that in any time people talk about your degeneracy and make fun of your degeneracy, that you and your audience are going to frame it as victim blaming and making fun of you for having been groomed. That is exactly what your audience was doing in your comment section.
I'm also not using the grooming itself to shield from the degen roleplay, because literally within my video I take my lumps there, saying that I should not have been there. I shouldn't have been doing those roleplays. And while I'm actually not going to defend the descriptor or the allowing of it to get that far, that's still on me for not drawing that boundary. I will say that with everything leading up to that point, when you put everything into its proper context and not just keeping it in a vacuum at face value, much like these people tend to do, it becomes less Doodle is a degenerate, or worse, a predator, and more Doodle actually didn't know any better. Because I didn't. I didn't have anyone tell me that I shouldn't be there, and I had grown up in an environment where this kind of behavior was encouraged. I shouldn't have done it. I agree there. That is my fault. I was 18, I was legally an adult. I should have tried to be more responsible in my actions. But I did not realize I was doing anything wrong. To say that I think otherwise is being dishonest, if not just a flat-out lie on Akumu's end. I've been told it is a little weird that I have to answer for things that I did as a kid anyways. Much of the stuff Akumu is holding me to predates me even being 17 after all, but I do tend to put the onus on me for being involved in those spaces regardless.
You also don't make any clarification in the video that you were a degenerate before the grooming. Obviously, your timeline technically says that for you, so you don't have to outright say it, but your audience was so fucking stupid that they clearly didn't pay attention to your timeline because they immediately went to your comments and said, oh, Doodles is groomed into being a degenerate. The people who have been making fun of Doodles for being a degenerate are just victim blaming. Akumu is victim blaming Doodles. So clearly they got that impression. In fact, Lio himself sort of got that impression, as Lio admitted on stream with me that he thought that Kirby and the Kirby roleplay was with Doodle's groomer, that they were the same individual. And if people aren't using the grooming to defend and excuse the degeneracy, why did Lio feel the need to bring it up? Stating that I was smearing Susie by a roleplay that did happen, that he admits to happening, but then mentions that Doodles is groomed as some explanation for the degenerate roleplay, when Doodles was a degenerate and doing degenerate roleplay before they had been groomed. So clearly, people got that fucking impression from your video.
I never defended myself doing the roleplays, not in Doodle is Cringe, not in the newest video. I am, however, sick of people taking the time to not be fucking weird about me doing so when it was a decade ago and I was a dumb kid. Furthermore, the notion that people haven't been making light of it is also untrue. I've been kinda holding off on talking about this since I know it would just encourage them to keep doing so, but after my video talking about my history and my grooming, there was an account made specifically to make content off of my old DeviantArt Pro fetish rants. They took my voice, threw it into AI, and generated an AI version of the character I made to represent myself during my grooming, making content to spotlight just how, quote, degenerate I was back in the day.
You're too single-minded and I never want to RP with you again.
Point 2. They made the diaper art predating the grooming, so they were already a degenerate before the grooming. And I guess who outlined that within my video? Look, the point of my grooming story being within the last third of the video to begin with was to frame a possible further argument of why I was even within these spaces to begin with. Because going even further than that, you might also have the very real argument of Doodle was groomed into it.
Stating you might have been groomed into it certainly doesn't imply that you're saying that you were groomed into being a degenerate. No, that's not what's happening there at all.
This was something even Call Me Nil understood. If it took me a decade after being a walking target for freaks to realize I was groomed by Alex, who's to say that it couldn't have happened even prior to Alex? Re-victimization is a thing. Statistically, those who are targets of this kind of behavior are prone to being victims again. And me, being in an environment that was inappropriate for me, with people, adults even, enabling my behavior, it's very possible that I was groomed into it prior. Of course, I may not fully realize that. I don't have evidence for it. Chatango doesn't keep chat logs that far back, and that's why I don't lean on it as an explanation within my video. But that's the thing many people seem to misunderstand about my video in whole anyway. I wasn't using the grooming to explain away the grooming. I brought up the story to show that it happened, and as a possible explanation as to why I was in the position that I was in. It does explain why I was so okay with the idea of playing an 8-year-old, because my groomer put me in a position where playing the role of a little wound up being the only thing that I knew, but I wasn't using the story to disregard being in fetish circles to begin with. It was to reframe the position I was potentially in. This is why the age I was in these spaces matters, by the way, just to get everyone on the same page. I guess, if I were to be fair to Akumu and others, my emotions did get the better of me towards the end of that video, and I do say that people were using my grooming as a weapon against me for like 8 years. I was caught up remembering that this was an allegation I faced from some of Sickly Dad's friends back in 2018, and so I lashed out where I shouldn't have, and maybe that wasn't the play. Perhaps I could have better worded myself, and there is a chance that at the end of that video muddied the waters to the rest of it. And I'll put that on myself if that's the case. It's not exactly the easiest thing to talk about, realizing that you were groomed a decade ago when you were put on the spot like Mad Libs did to me. It didn't help that I only learned of my grooming the same month the video was made, so I can accept that this misunderstanding is my fault. However, that would only excuse Akumu thinking that I was trying to use the grooming to explain the grooming.
Did you catch on to that wording there? Using the grooming to excuse the grooming? I never said anything like that, and Doodles has said that twice now. I said using the grooming to excuse the degeneracy, because anytime you now mention the fact that Doodles was a degenerate, people feel the need to bring up the fact that Doodles was groomed, which implies that they're saying that Doodles was groomed into it, which was not the case. Doodles was a degenerate before they met their groomer. I have not been saying remotely at any fucking point using the grooming to excuse the grooming. That doesn't make any fucking sense, and I've never said that before.
Does not, however, excuse how he approaches everything else about my story. Point 3. The roleplay in question wasn't with their groomer, it was with a different person, so Doodle has been lying about it this whole time. The fact that Akumu was too caught up in his presumptions to realize that these situations do not have to be one of the same for the grooming to matter shows me that he should never be involved in discussions like this.
It should show you that you should learn how to stay on fucking topic. Not that I shouldn't be involved in discussions like this because your excuses fucking suck. You, Peaches through Lio, and Fuchsia have felt the need to bring up shit that has zero fucking relevancy in an attempt to explain why you did certain things. You have done so for you being a degenerate, despite the fact that you were a degenerate before you even met the groomer. Lio did so with Peaches in an attempt to give us much needed context as to why Peaches was a-okay with what was going on in the FCK server, but publicly had no issue condemning people for the same thing. And Fuchsia thought that it was somehow relevant to explain why he was a degenerate. Make a separate video talking about what you went through if you really, really want to. Quit bringing it up when people take issue with something that you've done, especially when it has zero fucking relevancy. It doesn't connect by any fucking means. That is the issue. You all only seem to want to bring it up whenever you're being criticized for something. Do I need to start listing all the things that I went through in my childhood to explain the things that I do online? No, I don't. It's ridiculous. No one wants to hear that. You think that you're providing a why, and that somehow excuses the action. There are some people curious as to why people are doing certain things, but at the end of the day, it's that they have been done.
Ever. He does not know what he's talking about because the act of grooming coinciding with the actions of the victim would help explain why an individual acts the way that they do.
Yeah, I called it with the last line that I recorded. It was going exactly where I thought it was going to go. The why does not change the action, and you all seem to think that if you bring up the why and say that it's much needed context to the events when it's not because it has no connection to the events, so that you can then accuse anyone who doesn't bring it up, it doesn't kowtow to your excuse as not providing the context and having bad intentions and dishonest framing. Almost everyone can see right through your bullshit. You think that by bringing up the why, it'll magically change the action. It's a shitty attempt at downplaying or a pathos appeal that no one fucking cares for because, again, it has no relevancy. Like, again, perfect example being Peaches, whose groomer wasn't in the FCK server. Had the groomer been in the FCK server, we'd be having an entirely different conversation on that. But it wasn't the case.
This is also like he is with Hopeless Peaches, deflecting. Because grooming fucks with your mindset and makes you okay with things that aren't okay. We've already touched upon this.
You are projecting the deflecting in some shitty fucking attempt that everyone can see through to try and mask what you're doing. Deflecting is when you bring up random irrelevant fucking shit to escape why someone's pressing you on something, to escape a criticism. Say, for instance, Lio bringing up the actions of other fucking people that have no relevancy to the subject. Or, like in this case, Peaches bringing up that she was groomed despite the fact that the groomer had zero fucking relation to the FCK. Deflecting is pointing to irrelevant shit. I'm not pointing to irrelevant shit, and it's because I can point it out and not allow your all's deflect to work that you want to say that I'm deflecting because it's not working.
Kirby not being my groomer does not mean it no longer counts for anything.
Considering the fact that you were doing degenerate roleplay before you met your groomer, your grooming is not relevant to the Kirby roleplay. You can't say, well, I did the Kirby roleplay because I was groomed into doing that kind of roleplay, when you were doing that kind of roleplay before you even met the groomer. So you can't blame the grooming for why you did the Kirby roleplay, because you were doing that kind of roleplay before it. I don't know how many times I have to break this down, and I think you know exactly what I'm saying, you just don't want to acknowledge that because, well, it's inconvenient.
Point 4. They claimed they were uncomfortable with the roleplay, but returned to that roleplay under an alt account. This was the part that got complicated the more that I went through this chapter, and is another reason why I'm only going over the one video. This tangent's gonna get kind of long. So this is again something Akumu or really anyone can double check. The roleplay is still on my account, you can see the comments. Everything we can see within that roleplay between Kirby and I was on the Doodletones DeviantArt account, not my alt. The last message that I can see that I put into the thread was posted May 4th, 2015. My alt account didn't even exist until May 15th, 11 days after the roleplay supposedly ended. So unless DeviantArt is deleting or hiding old comments, which is possible post-Eclipse, DeviantArt has done a lot of stuff that hurt the site, or Akumu is fabricating evidence, since Akumu somehow has a screenshot to prove that I had returned on an alt account, though I haven't any idea as to where that image comes from or how he got it, since as stated before, I can't find it going directly to the source itself. Heck, I even perused through my Kiwi Farms thread to try and find it, and it seemed like no one had it there either, so I am a bit confused on where his source for this is.
I'm the source. The source is me. As I was scrolling through your degenerate roleplay, as my eyes were practically boiling, my stomach desiring to regurgitate, my brain on the verge of an aneurysm, I stumbled upon the fact that you returned on the SD Doodler account. Oh, and I recorded it. Not once, but twice. Now, as you can see right here, here is where SD the Doodler comes up. DeviantArt had this really weird thing back then, because I do remember recording this. You had to keep sliding left to right to then find the load more button. It is excruciatingly autistic, but I promise you it's there, unless Doodles has deleted it. I don't have to Photoshop shit. So yes, Susie, you did return on your new account, freshly made after your May 15th journal post. The post where you detail that your brother told your grandmother about your fetish account and she thought you had a mental illness.
But you know what? I'll go ahead and lean in on this possibility that I did. Just for the sake of argument and giving the benefit of doubt that maybe I'm just misremembering shit and DeviantArt had muddied my ability to research it. I know I had already established how I was as a kid. I didn't really know how to draw proper boundaries with people. That was something that I talked about in Doodle is Cringe, and this makes sense now considering how commonly enabled I was in these spaces. Plus, given the time frame this happened, as I had learned recently, my groomer wouldn't have helped matters on how I felt about my own discomfort. Because again, that is how grooming works, despite how much Akumu and pals want to claim otherwise.
No, the issue is that you claimed that you were made uncomfortable by this roleplay.
However, there was one that I would be amiss to talk about. The Game Girl RP. Technically, this is out of order since it was 2015, but since we're talking about them now, and this one did spark up a little bit of controversy in 2018 that got some very not-so-nice allegations lobbed at me, I feel like I should talk about it now. Mainly because of the not-thought-out descriptor of the character not being physically older than 8 years old, and then having one of the people I was role-playing with have a character that was supposed to be moldable, grow breasts only to grope them. It's a little creepy, sure, I don't really have an excuse for how creepy it sounds, and I'm not going to defend it on the basis of it being creepy or otherwise uncomfortable. I was a stupid 18-year-old by this point who didn't know how to tell people that I was uncomfortable.
Someone who's uncomfortable with the discussion doesn't make an alt account to return to it and continue it. They would have taken the opportunity to leave it. Not only did this roleplay last for a month, but you returned to it.
It would therefore make sense were I to come back to the thread on my alt account, because despite my discomfort, this would have been seen as normal to me. Whether or not I was uncomfortable shouldn't come into question just because I kept doing it.
Listen, I may have made an alt account and returned to the conversation, but I was very uncomfortable with it, guys. I did not like it one bit. What person comes back to a conversation that they aren't enjoying, that is making them feel uncomfortable? Who goes out of their way to continue to come back and continue it after having the perfect opportunity to just leave it?
Because now we have the context that I was being groomed in tandem with me doing that roleplay, it would make sense that I didn't want to leave the roleplay due to the fact that this was seen as normal.
Your argument is that because you were being groomed in tandem, you came back to the roleplay because it was normal for you, because of the grooming. The grooming normalized that behavior, right? Okay, so explain to me how and why you've repeatedly claimed that while you were doing the roleplay, it made you uncomfortable. You said that that roleplay made you uncomfortable, but you allowed it to continue because you just didn't know how to speak up. And now you're saying that it was normalized for you. So if it was normalized for you, how are you made uncomfortable by it? To begin with, you should have just said that I was normalized. It doesn't really make it right. It doesn't change a fucking thing. But it would have been better than just saying, well, it made me uncomfortable. Because if you were normalized to that behavior, how would you have been made uncomfortable by it if it was your norm? It's not mathing. This is all over the place.
Mind you, this presumes that what Akumu shows us in another one of his videos, where he deliberately disregards what my feelings could have been in that situation, rather explicitly may I add, is even true.
Akumu has been regularly spreading an RP Susie did when they were a couple of months past 18. An RP Susie herself did not make sexual, but the other party did.
This is the same cope that Doodles did in the video. The other person made it sexual, I didn't. And yet Susie was perfectly fine with it being sexual. After Kirby made it sexual, Doodletones continued on with this roleplay. It lasted a month. Susie even came back on an alt account to continue the roleplay.
Yeah, by the way, you're doing a great job beating those victim-blaming allegations there, Akumu. It's very your honor if she didn't want to get abused. Why did she go back to her abuser of you?
Victim blaming. There it is. There it is. Victim blaming would be saying that you are at fault for being groomed. And the problem here is, Alex and Kirby are two different individuals. Unless you know that the two are the same, why don't you state that? Why don't you ever state that Kirby and Alex are the two same individuals? Because they aren't. Now, if you have some kind of evidence proving that Kirby also groomed you, why don't you share it? You probably would have already done so considering you made an entire video talking about this. The best part about this is you're saying that I'm victim blaming after saying you weren't going to do that if people talk about your degeneracy. You teeter-totter, you flip-flopped. 1 minute, you're not using the fact that you were groomed to cover up the degeneracy. But then when I'm talking about the degeneracy, and you coming back to the roleplay that wasn't with Alex, was with Kirby, you say it's victim blaming. But you're not using the fact you were groomed to cover for your degeneracy. What a crock of shit.
I can also approach this from a secondary, less connected direction, but that's still kind of related. Let's talk about compartmentalization, a new word to add to one's lexicon. Psychology today describes compartmentalization as a defense mechanism in which people mentally separate conflicting thoughts, emotions, or experience to avoid the discomfort of contradiction. It's a way some will use to avoid facing cognitive dissonance. This can take the form of something small, like a disagreement about politics that you push aside for a friendship to last, to something as severe as dismissing an addiction so you can have a few more drinks at a bar. In a more domestic setting, a victim of domestic abuse may compartmentalize their own abuse as a mere facet of a relationship and not therein see the problem with returning to an abuser. Now, compartmentalization is not always a negative, however. Sometimes you require the need to put aside a specific conflict in order to approach a different one, so like with most things, there does require some nuance. So it does need to be a case-by-case basis. But when there obviously is something wrong, such be the case with my situation, then that can be indicative of a deeper problem. Regarding my situation, even if we were to put the grooming aside, I've stated before that my use of role-playing was as an escape during a really stressful time in my life.
Doesn't change the fact it's degenerate. Get to your fucking point.
I was struggling with online homeschool, dropped out to get my GED, and all the while was struggling with suicidal ideation and had no healthy way of coping. So my discomfort being put aside in favor of a roleplay to escape those feelings of stress would show that I could have been compartmentalizing it, because the feeling of not being stressed anymore would have felt so much better than whatever discomfort that I was feeling. And no, that's not great. That's not healthy. But if we're really out here disregarding whatever effects me being groomed would have had on me during this time frame, then we could still look at my actions as what it ultimately could have been within a vacuum. You know, deliberate disregard for my discomfort so I could continue avoiding a different unhealthy feeling. Like, this is without question an example of unhealthy escapism, which is detailed by psychologist Richard Nicarsto in The Dark Side of Mental Compartmentalization as escapism that comes at a cost of self and others. When the activity hijacks the rest of your life instead of providing a temporary respite from it, it's time to reassess what you're doing and why. And I just hadn't realized that I was addicted to this stuff until 2020 when I was able to talk about it in hindsight, which is also something I detail as a realization as far back as Doodle is cringe. That said, I could have also done less role-playing, or at the very least chosen a different path of role-playing, because as much as I'd argue this was the most helpful thing that kept me sane during some of the worst years of my life, this was still something that obviously overran my account for a while, and while looking through the pages again after so many years of not browsing through them, I could make the very reasonable argument that this was an addiction that probably was not as healthy of an escape as I thought it was at the time. I will state fully that I do not regret getting into looking at the fetishes I got around to looking at, as this helped me understand and sympathize with people to a certain degree. You're free to try and skewer me for that all you want, but we all grow at different rates and utilizing different methods of learning.
I use roleplay to escape. You've already said this. You're just expanding on it further while repeating it. In what way does this change anything that I've said? You're actually going way off the fucking deep end instead of just directly addressing what I said. In what way does you using it for escapism change the fact that you return to the roleplay? You're providing a why. I want to know if you actually did it or not. You tried to suggest that you didn't, and then now you're going into this long-winded fucking speech about how it was escapism, as if you already didn't give this speech, as if people already haven't heard this. We already know the why. Quit repeating it and thinking it'll magically change the problem. It's like saying, this is why I did this, while waving your hands in the air, hoping it'll, eviscerate from existence.
Believe it or not, I do get uncomfortable with things getting to an explicitly sexual level. I'm not totally adverse to sexual themes, but there's a point where I do get uncomfortable, and having a character just get constantly groped, and maybe even bored if that other screenshot is accurate, would be my own personal limit.
But not the diaper shitting.
And you can kinda see that given how I visibly reply in that roleplay. I kinda don't interact and give very brief, very sparse replies to their actions. And if that doesn't do it for you, I did a very brief review of Bondage Game 2 months before meeting my groomer that would help demonstrate where my boundaries at the time actually were. And it's the explicitly sexual nature that was the turnaway for me. And I quote, "I can get behind fucked up fetishes, but if you find any of this arousing, I'm sorry, but I truly do not want to know your backstory." So I did have boundaries, believe it or not. I just wasn't great at actually telling people where they were. I must have pushed them aside for that roleplay, if not had them downright dwindled due to the grooming Akumu doesn't want to acknowledge could have had an effect on me.
Doesn't want to acknowledge. I acknowledged it all right. I pointed out that you were doing degenerate roleplay before you met your groomer. You can't blame your degenerate roleplays on your groomer and that they groomed you into doing it if you were doing it before, and we know that you were. That's not victim blaming to point out that you were doing a certain behavior before you met the groomer, and yet you're teeter-tottering. 1 minute you aren't saying it, next minute you're saying it, but that your groomer pushed you into doing it, when that behavior existed before you met them. That's not victim blaming to point that out.
He doesn't want to give the benefit of doubt that maybe I could be telling the truth about my comfort levels. Because if he did that, then it puts into question his narrative that I am a dishonest person, that I was a degenerate for whatever purpose that serves.
There's no narrative if it's the truth, and you did degenerate roleplay. So yeah, you were a degenerate. Drawing yourself and picturing yourself shitting in a diaper is very fucking degenerate. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt right now, even if I was wrong about the fact that you returned to the roleplay to continue it, despite the fact that you literally did. Let's just say I'm wrong about that. You've still lied about other shit. I don't have to, this isn't my gotcha for you. This is just one of the things that I find a little humorous. The fact that you returned to it, yet you've claimed it made you uncomfortable. So even if I give the benefit of the doubt and say that you didn't return, I pretend as though I don't know that, as though I don't have it fucking recorded. I still have examples of you lying and other shit. Your defense of Ben the Looney in one of your old worst lists that you've consistently lied about for the past few years is just one example.
He would rather assert that I have been lying about things because it's easier to argue against if people believe that.
It's not an assertion if there's fucking evidence.
Which in of itself is not an honest way of approaching this discussion.
Neither is saying someone is asserting things because they bring evidence to the table that's inconvenient for you.
You don't know how I was feeling during that time frame. I can tell you how I was, and you can choose not to believe me, such as you've been doing since my video had dropped. But to assert that I am lying about it using logic that is already argued via the explanations that have been prior given.
You saying that you did roleplay for escapism does not remotely address the fact that you have repeatedly claimed to have been made uncomfortable by that roleplay when you were doing it. Yet you left out the fact that you returned to continue that roleplay, which is not indicative of being uncomfortable.
Shows to me at least that Akumu doesn't want to listen to what we have to say.
I want to see if you have evidence that proves the claims wrong. That's what I want to see. I don't want a marathon of yapping to provide some excuse that doesn't change a fucking thing. That's not what we're here for by any fucking means. People want to know if I'm lying. You all have consistently pushed the idea that I am lying, that I have been dishonest, yet you cannot give a clear-cut example of where I've lied or been dishonest. Yet, for some reason, there's a plethora with you. People want to know if the claims are true or false, not an excuse for the action. They want to know if it was done. They want to know if you have evidence to prove that it wasn't done. That is what people are here for. That is what people are watching for. Not 5 minutes of a speech of some fucking excuse for why you did something. No one needs a fucking breakdown of psychology. They want to know if the action was done, or if it wasn't done, if someone's making a false claim, or if the claim is true. That is what people mean when they say they'll hear you out. That is what I mean when I say I'll hear you out.
Doesn't want to give the benefit of doubt when it could be required to do so.
Giving someone the benefit of the doubt for an accusation that has evidence proving it. How would you do that exactly? If evidence shows that it's true, how exactly do you give them the benefit of the doubt? Unless you're saying just don't talk about it because it's inconvenient for you. Otherwise, why do you keep talking about this benefit of the doubt? The evidence shows everyone fucking everything. You haven't been able to cite one time that I haven't been able to provide substantial evidence. There are 2 times now in this video that you've came close to showing that I may not have evidence for a claim. You first did it with the Nezi monster statement in Lyo's DMs, and yet I managed to provide evidence for that. That happened 3 or 4 days after Ben the Looney threatened the group. Then you just did it recently with suggesting that I possibly photoshopped you returning on your alt account, only for me to whip out a fucking recording of it. It's twice now that you have failed to provide an example of me not providing evidence for a claim. Maybe 3rd time's the charm, who fucking knows?
And doesn't want to not be fucking weird about something that, by the way, should not have even mattered to the situation surrounding the FCK they want us to focus so heavily on. My video was made in response to Madlib's heavily implying that I was a predator, not the FCK stuff.
Don't talk about my video, is basically all I'm fucking hearing.
And Akumu, mere weeks prior, was conversing with someone else calling me a predator, pushing the exact same roleplay Madlib was using. And even in Akumu's defense, he wasn't calling me a predator, just a degenerate, so he should understand why I would address things when I did, especially since I detail that within my video. So the inspiration for this particular iteration of me addressing the things that refused to let me go was Madlib's art, an ex-art commentator who decided to go salted earth when she didn't need to on Twitter, February 23rd, 2024. In this thread, she, very out of nowhere may I add, throws extra shade on me after already saying that I was a bad person for empathetically saying someone else could have merely forgotten a screenshot for a situation that they were involved in, for talking about things that people hold me to from so many years ago, specifically mentioning that I called it diaper shit from 2014. All of this, however, continues to go back and beg the question of why Akumu is so quick to more or less disregard or argue against Toasty Vanilla being held more accountable for their actions.
I never said anything remotely close to that. This is complete schizo posting.
Because he's been focusing so hard on my degen behavior when I was the same age as Toasty and being groomed. Or younger in regards to some of my other fetish posting. Like, Toasty was doing worse in both the Fruitcake Club and externally, as they were actively hurting other people, knowingly and willingly enabling minors as young as 12 or 13 in the server, and putting the rest of the adults around them in an awkward position retroactively if they may not have known something was up.
And I've talked about all of that. Toasty Vanilla hasn't made a dog shit response, let alone a response in general, for me to take issue with and make a video on. Unlike you who made the addressing that roleplay one last time video. So I talked about it. I can't make a video on something that doesn't fucking exist.
Like, all of this focusing on my grooming story ultimately is a nothing burger of a distraction at best.
I didn't bring up your grooming story. You did, and I made a singular video on it. I didn't bring up your grooming story. Lio did, so I made a singular point in regards to it. So what do you mean all this focus? You're acting like all my TISM reports are about your grooming story. You're not nearly as important as you think you are.
Because if all Akumu wants is for me to, quote, agree to being a degenerate, then whatever. Fine. I guess I was a degenerate kid.
See, not that hard. It's better when we're honest.
Like, every time the topic had been brought to me, I've admitted to doing the role plays. I'm just tired of people ignoring the nuance and how long ago it was to label me as a much worse person. So
No. We're not doing that. For several years, you and your audience and your friends have denied you having a diaper fetish. Let's not pretend that didn't happen.
something you both simultaneously do and don't seem to agree with, but yeah, fine though. If it helps you sleep at night, I was a degenerate kid. Hell, you could maybe call me a degenerate now if that's really what you want to do. If that's the title you want to go with, then fine, whatever. It is a little annoying to deal with it every couple of years, but ultimately it's no skin off my back.
That's not what I've heard from behind the scenes, but alright, you keep your chin up.
Now, what does this actually have to do with my involvement in the FCK?
I have never claimed had any involvement to do with the FCK, just that you're one of the degenerates that was in the FCK.
What does my role-playing a decade ago have to do with my obliviousness to the situation that I was in 4 years ago?
Well, you weren't really that oblivious towards the end of 2020. You admitted that. But no, I've, again, never claimed that your degeneracy has anything to do with the FCK. So I don't know why you're asking this question implying that I have. Unless, of course, you're trying to, yet again, vaguely complain that I've talked about it. I find your denial of it hilarious. That's why I talk about it.
Why don't you focus on the actual victims of the FCK and helping them tell their stories instead of shotgunning at everyone else and literally proving Lio correct and that all you wanted to do was control a narrative?
Probably not a good idea to cite Lio's control the narrative projection when he admitted on stream that that was projection, that he rushed his conundrum video out. But hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. And when you're playing with a shit hand, you just have to play with that shit hand.
And that is what you're doing, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed you're doing that. All of your TISM report videos have been exactly you spinning a narrative, taking any third-party info you can gather to prime the audience into thinking that we're going to pull all of these supposed manipulation tactics, to run a defense bracket, or to somehow underplay what it is we've actually done in the FCK.
Except you all have done many of the things that I accused you all of doing in my TISM reports based off of the information I was being given. Lio used the Ellie Momeli screenshots, the Nezi monster screenshots that you all thought would somehow benefit you in some fucking way. I don't know how you all deluded yourselves into thinking that, but wow. Lio deflected by making new accusations. Lio, in his video, didn't own up to lying. He gave me an apology for calling me the false accusation supreme, but he didn't admit to lying in the video. He did that on stream, where less of his audience were likely to see it. You've gone on and on about how I'm bad faith, yet can't show an actual example of that, aside from pedantic complaints that don't change a fucking thing. You admitted that you can't actually prove that I've lied, so you're saying that I've dishonestly framed it, and none of your examples of dishonest framing can stick. I said all of that in my TISM reports before you all publicized your responses.
And you'll shotgun at anything. You've dismissed all nuance because you don't want the audience to hear that there may be a gray area to consider within this situation, and that your way of presenting things may have faults within them. You label it as pedantic, as unimportant to what it is that you're saying.
Now, allegedly, their responses and its angle is constantly changing because they're scattered and all over the place. Frantic, even. But the main theme is that it's extremely pedantic in its complaints over the coverage of the FCK. Which leads me to believe that, yet again, they'll proclaim that it's being misrepresented. That I'm somehow being disingenuous or dishonest in how I'm speaking about it. Holy shit. So not only do you do the thing that I accuse you of doing in the video, but then you play a clip proving ahead of time that I accused you of doing it. I don't even have to show the clip. I don't have to go back and splice in the TISM report clips. You're playing it right now. That the presentation of the FCK Discord server is somehow dishonest. But like before, unable to specify what's a lie or false.
You've put someone's harassment into question, claiming that we could be faking it because you think it'll be used for sympathy points.
What I find odd is that Ellie managed to screenshot all of these seemingly at the same time as they were receiving the messages. 8:50, the first message from Yamamama is 8:37, 1:23, as they got a message from the Middleton account, and then the names. Yamamama 336, Philly Philly Pilly, Ellie Mo Melly, Melly Mo Ellie. You notice that? Bit of a rhyming thing that goes on with Ellie's name. And the usernames also have that same rhyming thing going on there, at least two of them. And the other one is Middleton with Decon Con. So what I'm suspecting is that either A, this is an individual who already knew Ellie and had a grudge with Ellie, and they made these alt accounts to fuck with Ellie because they're upset about the FCK thing, or B, these accounts were made by Ellie or someone else to message Ellie, or, themselves, herself, and say all of this. And again, it's also odd to go after Ellie, of all people, whose name was just mentioned in passing. So hold on, speculation is fine until it happens to you all. I provided an A and B scenario of what I thought it could be, a 50-50, and my audience speculated. Not once did I tell them that either one was a fact.
You've read so hyper-literally and so uncharitably to things people say so you can further a more aggressive or more extreme allegation, such as you did with Nezi when you know we've been talking to people who are looking through the FCK behind the scenes.
And on Twitter, she's recently started implying that there's more shit that she knew of in 2020 to do with the FCK that wasn't in the server itself. Bravo, finally some honesty, some transparency here. But this just means that you are implying that you know more, or that you knew more about what was going on, and yet still said nothing. Yet you could condemn others for doing exactly that.
Nezi and I both learned in the midst of this situation that there was external grooming. We didn't know in 2020. Neither of us could have known. But you're once again asserting something based on minimal knowledge.
You're playing the clip going over the fact that Nezi implied that there was more, and that she knew more. And you're taking issue with the fact that I implied that that means Nezi knew more and didn't speak up. And that prediction of mine, that Nezi knew more and still didn't publicly condemn Toasty but could publicly condemn others, was proven right by you fucking idiot. You put the screenshots in this video showing that Nezi knew a lot more about Toasty, saying that what he was doing was straight up illegal, that he was a sexual harasser, comparing him to V Omega, where he admitted in Nezi's DMs that he was sending porn to Teddy. So Nezi very clearly, very obviously knew a lot more than just what was going on in the FCK server, and yet never publicly condemned Toasty, but could publicly condemn me for less, and someone else she could publicly, just a few days later, publicly condemn a minor of sexual harassment. You're playing a clip from my TISM report of that prediction in the same video where you do exactly what I said you all were gonna do.
And just generally, you've painted with this broad brush, pointing out things to look for as if it's a bingo card for credibility.
Yes, I'm going to let people know what types of tricks you're going to play on them if I can confidently say so from my sources. And look how that played out, Doodles. I mean, the sheer fucking cognitive dissonance is insane. My sources came to me. They wanted to inform me of this because they weren't happy with you all and the responses you all were making. And now that I've seen these responses for myself, I can see exactly why. Because almost everything that they told me ended up being right.
That doesn't make you a good critic. It doesn't mean that we are predictable. It just means that there are things you don't want to be brought up.
It's because you don't want us talking about certain things. Like what? I wanted an honest response, but I knew we probably weren't going to get really much honesty out of any of you. So I did want this kind of response. I was hoping my sources were right, because I can show people in real fucking time your dishonesty, your tricks, your own deflection, your excuses. I'm trying to wrap my head around that. Why would I not want that? I mean, I want an honest response, but I'll gladly take this.
That you want to shut out. You are preemptively casting a shadow of a doubt upon us before we even have a chance to respond. And it's especially annoying when you start to assert something is happening behind the scenes without knowing if it's exactly true or not. You claim Nezi was helping Lyle with this video specifically to leverage such a claim, but it's no secret that the situation has been horrible on Nezi's mental health. We didn't ask them to help, and in turn, they didn't. Really. The only help that you could extract from this situation was exporting their DMs with Toasty and then passing them to me to parse through.
Nezi Monster didn't help us, but Nezi Monster helped us.
But you make such an assumption anyway, specifically so you can make a bigger deal about it. These TISM report videos seem to only exist to prime an audience to merely dismiss any and all critique against you if it aligns with your pre-established predictions.
Maybe don't be dishonest, maybe don't try and point the finger elsewhere, maybe don't try and use pathos appeals. Just a couple of ideas on how to be direct in your videos addressing this. The very fact that you all weren't going to be honest and direct that led people coming to me to tell me what you all were doing. And how many times have those predictions from those individuals informing me been right so far? Quite a few.
Like, you keep alluding to the fact that our responses are going to suck in these videos, claiming that we're just going to run damage control throughout. But if you're so confident in that fact, why would you need to make multiple videos making this claim?
You'll be claiming that I'm bad faith, likely by using my statements in the FCK server, which I've already gone over previously, the fact I didn't like the FCK before all of this, oh gee, I wonder why, or that I'm covering this as much as I am, my constant videos on the subject matter. The problem with that is, I'm not monetized. He can't say I'm milking this for money because I haven't made a penny off of this. My motivation as to why I'm making these videos and pumping them out is purely to get the information others have given me to you all because they want me to tell you all ahead of time because they're disappointed with Liao. This isn't something where it's just me and I want to well poison and not have you listen to Liao's side. I want to hear Liao's side out too. But at the same time, if I'm being told ahead of time and shown ahead of time that Liao does not intend to be honest, those same people showing and telling me these things want me to tell you all ahead of time. And I have no problem with that because lying, finger pointing elsewhere with red herring logical fallacy of, oh, they did this, or claiming I'm bad faith is not getting your side out. It's shifting the fucking topic and trying to attack credibility. With this video and Liao's addressing things video in mind, you did most of the things that I just described in that clip. You're just upset that I told people ahead of time, which if you didn't want that to happen, either do better at keeping it closed doors, or maybe just directly address things.
I just had to go back and add this upon seeing it, mostly because it keeps becoming a point in these TISM reports. Much of this all starts to ring hollow when you remember Akumu's stated intentions of putting into question what is effectively the ethos of those in the community. Remember, to him, we are all lying, sanctimonious, and dishonest hypocrites. After all, we can't be trusted. We're manipulative and trying to save our own ass. We won't take accountability. We won't fess up to what we've done. And that's the thing that he wants to show the world. That's, by his own admission, what he's focusing on in these TISM report videos. He's merely reporting on our dishonesty so that people know we are dishonest and lying.
Maybe if I didn't have 4 years worth of experience with your community doing these same tricks, maybe if I didn't have an entire playlist of videos going over these tricks played out in different fucking events throughout several years, mainly 1 year, but in general different events in 1 year with reoccurring behaviors and reoccurring tricks from your community and close friends. Maybe if you didn't do some of those things in this very fucking video, I wouldn't be pointing them out. Maybe if I wasn't told ahead of time, because you all planned on doing this, then I wouldn't have made the videos to begin with. You're bitching and whining because I told people ahead of time. Instead of just, I don't know, did you ever stop and think, what if we drop the tricks? What if we quit the deflection, the finger pointing, the excuses, the pathos appeals? What if we dropped all of that and just directly talked about it? Everyone would be happy about that. But you haven't done that. I'll give you credit where it's due. You helped Thuman to find out that there were other minors in the server, as young as 12 and 13. You have full fucking credit there. But that can't magically make this video better.
But like, calling him bad faith or dishonestly presenting information. No, that's totally deflecting from the point.
Your examples of how I'm dishonestly framing it fell flat on their ass. Your shoddy attempt to show how I'm bad faith in my intentions by telling people ahead of time doesn't work because you did the very things that I was told you were going to do. And that's the worst part about this. You could have went and changed your response up so that it could have been actually decent, could have been better, and yet you went ahead and hit the upload button knowing you did many of the things that I was told. There's nothing that can really explain the mistakes in this video so far, other than being an idiot and a hypocrite. He's bad faith because he told you ahead of time what we're gonna do, and then we went ahead and did it. If you wanted to actually make me properly look bad faith, maybe you should have, again, changed your response so that it wouldn't match with what I was being told and telling everyone you were going to do. That would have actually made me look bad faith. You could have actually twisted things there in the events to suit your benefit. You're just saying I'm bad faith because I told people ahead of time. Or that I'm reading into things uncharitably, and yet I read into it perfectly right. The DMs that you gave us of Nezi Monster show us that she knew a lot more about Toasty Vanilla and the FCK in August of 2020, yet never condemned him publicly. Yet I could be condemned for less than that, and she could accuse a minor of sexual harassment. Like I said, sanctimonious fucking hypocrisy. And you try and deny that you all are sanctimonious hypocrites, and yet you inadvertently help prove that with this video, which again, you you could have avoided this by changing it.
That's just attacking my credibility, guys. It gets really silly when you think about it. Like, he knows credibility is important. If he didn't think as such, why would he focus so hard on it?
This is a blatant fucking projection. Credibility isn't nearly as important to me because I know how your community and your all's idea of credibility is. Your idea of credibility is based off of reputation, and we all know that's severely fucking inconsistent. I've proven that I don't know how many times. Quick example, let's look at the FCK videos on me. How many of them were worshipped throughout 2020 and 2021, and 2022 even? Only for them to turn out to be giant pieces of dog shit. Nezi Monster and Ponder Sprockets Part 1, for example. How many people have linked that video to other people saying, go look here, this is a great spot for information on Akumu. Really great hit piece. And we all know how well that aged. You all base credibility on reputation, and because reputation is so inconsistent, and the reason it's so inconsistent is because your all's moral standards are inconsistent. I just went over Nezi Monster as a perfect fucking example, not even 60 seconds ago, but in general, overall, you all will condemn one person for one behavior and then make excuses for another individual doing it, or yourselves doing it. Or the fact that you did it, or your friends did that behavior, won't be talked about. And yet you're so credible, and I'm not. Yet ironically, if I'm not so credible, why is it you can't go for the evidence? Instead, when you all can't go for the evidence, when you can't disprove the evidence, you target reputation. You target credibility. You use guilty by association. You say the individual's bad faith intentions or dishonestly framing. You all have done this time and time again to me and other people when you can't actually disprove the evidence. Because you know that the evidence is inconvenient for you. And so a subtle way of downplaying it is convincing the audience that the individual sharing it has bad faith intentions or is dishonestly framing it, despite the fact that you can't show a single instance of dishonesty. So what do? You point to me accurately predicting what you're going to do, or mistakes that I made, and the same mistakes that I corrected, and you admit that I corrected. So if I have bad faith intentions, why am I correcting misinformation? If I had bad faith intentions and was dishonestly framing it, why would I make sure to correct any misinformation I put out there? Make that make sense, Doodles. Go on. If I had such bad faith intentions, why is it one of the most immediate things that I did is go to Hidden Heroin to inform Lyle that if it wasn't his, I would gladly make a fucking retraction. I would do that immediately. I have no intentions on smearing anyone, because I don't need to. The evidence is plentiful. Someone who I can prove has lied, whether that be in this video or outside of this video, who I can prove has made inaccuracies in this video, who can't prove that I have lied, but can only cite inaccuracies that I corrected or predictions that ended up being right, wants to lecture me about bad faith intentions and dishonest framing. That is the best takeaway from this. Because your only examples so far of my bad faith intentions is my uncharitable assumptions, and yet those uncharitable assumptions ended up being exactly right because you didn't think about what screenshots you were putting in the video. You just thought, oh, this might contradict what he's saying because we have DMs of Nezi talking to Toasty about stuff. Again, I have to thank you for that. I genuinely have to thank you for that. On top of the fact that your other examples of my dishonest framing were the Lyle Convoy DMs, where I didn't provide evidence of Ben the Looney threatening the group days prior. Then I provided it in this video. Then you tried to push the notion that I potentially photoshopped that screenshot of you coming back on your SD the Doodler, only for me to whip out a recording. On top of the fact that you've shown that I've corrected my mistakes and my inaccuracies and my misinformation. You of all people lecturing me and the audience about how I'm bad faith and dishonest while not being able to provide a single instance of me lying. The audience is now going to have a plethora of questions for you. So you have fun with that.
Almost starts to look like a fear response after a while. Kinda like if you were preemptively putting your guard up, waiting to get punched after hitting someone else first. And I don't know what you'd be afraid of. I've already said that I agree the FCK was inappropriate. If the rest of my criticisms are merely pedantic and negligible, why would you need to fight back against them when clearly the audience would also see that fact?
I find it fucking hilarious that you're trying to suggest that I'm fearful or worrying about this, but I'm not going to get into why just yet, because unlike you, I don't need to distract away from shit, so I'll provide you the answer yet again. You're well aware of the fact that my series is to show the sanctimonious hypocrisy with this community, but another thing that I talk about in my series is how they bamboozle the audience, something that the audience has gradually started to become aware of. I've gotten comments on my Ponder video and other videos of people that are disappointed either with Ponder or themselves for being as gullible as they were. But the point of my series is not just to show the sanctimonious hypocrisy, but to show the playbook of tricks. And then people come to me during this shit with Peaches, Lio, and the few FCK people that are still around, letting me know that you all intend to do the same fucking tricks that you did back then in 2020. The red herring logical fallacy distractions of, oh, don't talk about what just came out about us. Instead, talk about shit that we've already spoken about these other people that are bringing up the shit about us. Or let's make new accusations on those people as an attempt to distract away from this. Or these sob story excuses that are pathos appeals, claiming that they're explanations instead of just directly answering whether something did or didn't fucking happen. Or the fact that you all can't disprove my evidence, can't prove that I've lied, so instead you claim that I have bad faith intentions and that I'm dishonestly framing it. All of those are the same tricks that the FCK did in 2020. So when I find out that you all plan on doing the same playbook, I'm gonna make my audience aware of that. Now, in regards to you, I know that you were frantically fucking panicking behind the scenes because of the fact that all this information was coming out at once, that it was an onslaught of information, because of the fact that I was telling the audience ahead of time what you all were planning on doing, worrying about who in particular was giving me the information, which if the information's wrong, you could have used that against me. But instead what you do is you make an entire new segment that was obviously also rushed, talking about my TISM reports in an attempt to mask the fact that you did almost everything my TISM reports said you would do in this video, and it doesn't mask it very well.
Why would you need to prime the audience to see it? And this is exactly why I claimed you specifically do not care about the victims.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Because I'm telling people ahead of time of the tricks that you all plan on doing. I don't care about the victims. In what way does that make any fucking sense? The sheer leap in mental gymnastics. But this is another example of a distraction. Because they can't disprove the evidence, they can't show that I've lied. Well, let's just talk about how he doesn't care about the victims, but we can't actually really show that, so let's use shit like, well, he told everyone ahead of time what we're gonna do. Clearly, that's indicative that he doesn't care about the victims, despite the fact that that has nothing to do with the victims. It's throwing in irrelevant fucking shit, because they can't actually respond to what's being claimed and what's being shown.
Something you seem downright offended by the mere notion of.
And because the sheer fucking gall, the testicular fortitude to do what they're doing behind the scenes, and yet want to accuse me of not caring about the fucking victims is rich.
But you making these preemptive defense videos that you were, trying to frame us as merely running damage control when neither of us have really been denying that we did wrong, putting more of a focus and putting more pressure on just about everyone that was even in the vicinity of the FCK, Nuance be damned. And
sob story excuses that are just pathos appeals are not nuance. I know you paint it as nuance, that way if anyone doesn't tolerate it and they cut past your bullshit, you can say that they don't want nuance. Basically, they claim that their playbook of tricks is nuance, and that the situation needs nuance, which is conveniently their playbook of tricks. It's setting up a demand and supply system so that they can easily worm said tricks into the situation. If I'm wrong about that, then why is Doodles taking issue with me telling telling people ahead of time said playbook of tricks and claiming that I just don't like Nuance. These people tell on themselves by their own actions and words and don't even realize it.
Nuance is important in this situation because there are more guilty and less guilty parties in this situation, and distracting from that by saying everyone is equally as bad doesn't do the victims justice.
You want to talk about me straw manning, and then you make a claim like that. Never once have I said everyone is equally as bad. In fact, I've already shown in my FCK video that I said Toasty's one of the most guiltiest people in there. The problem comes down to the fact that the same people that could condemn everyone else and demand everyone else be held accountable for the last 4 years knew about this and said nothing. Yet they demand everyone else talk about shit like this. They present themselves as these moral fucking arbiters. So even if they weren't as guilty as Toasty Vanilla, fucking obviously, they still knew and pretended to be these morally virtuous fucking figures to hold other people accountable, yet never said a fucking thing about Toasty or what went on in the FCK. You're just upset about the fact that I'm not allowing you all to downplay and worm your way out of it. And you're painting that as though I'm saying everyone's equally as guilty. No, I'm just not allowing you to downplay your role, your involvement, and your knowledge, like you've tried to do with yourself and Nezi Monster in this video.
Because it creates a group that the guilty parties can hide or deflect from. It ultimately distracts from the people who actually abused their victims.
Do you really think that everyone is stupid enough to fall for this? You trying to cast the blame as to the topic being shifted onto me and us? It was Lio who chose to involve himself and lie for Peaches, making that a bigger spectacle. He continued to do so, making that a bigger spectacle from February to March. It was you all who chose to scheme behind the scenes instead of directly talking about it. It was you who chose to make this video instead of directly talking about it, which is resulting in me having to pull it apart and dissect it for all to see. Quit trying to downplay and make excuses for your all's own involvement, and maybe it won't be such a big topic. Oh my god, I keep trying to downplay, lie, and make excuses for my involvement. Why are people talking about that? Clearly, Scooby-Doo's gonna have to solve that mystery.
It doesn't seem like you want to help the victims get their stories out there, or to hold the actually guilty parties to any form of accountability, as much as you just want to destroy the reputations and credibility of just about everyone who was in a server that did have some bad faith actors towards you.
This is what I mean by I don't think these people actually are paying attention to what they're saying in their responses and why this shit is rushed, because the implications of this are not good for them. If me telling the truth and being transparent and not allowing bullshit fucking excuses to be thrown into the mix and keeping it straight to the point, purely fact-based, if I end up spreading any misinformation, I've been correcting it. If me just being that open and that truthful is destroying credibility and reputation, clearly some fucky shit went down. Clearly, there's something off here with this community. Obviously, the audience is upset with the fact that these same individuals who could grandstand and hold others accountable and condemn other people had no issue with this and didn't talk about this for years. Because we all know for a fact that if I had done this shit, if anyone else had done this shit, they would have immediately brought the hammer down, okay? All of them would be bandwagoning that individual right fucking now. I'm digging into this video as much as I am, hoping that there's something brought to the table that actually changes something, and so far, that hasn't happened. But again, if truth and transparency are so bad that it's destroying credibility and reputation, then clearly it's pretty fucking damning what took place. And I'll entertain your argument for a second, that I'm trying to destroy credibility and reputation. That's my goal here. And not just to show how that community is. Even if I was, it's still true. The evidence is still true. You yourself have been unable throughout this video to show me lying. You admitted that you can't prove that I'm lying, that you don't have a single example of a lie that I've told. So even if that was the case, which it isn't, but even if it was, the evidence is still true. How the audience responds to that is their own fucking choice. That's why I said what I said in one of my TISM reports, trying to steer the bull of this situation in the direction that you all want it in a direction that's most convenient for you all. It is the audience's decision because they're now aware of the bullshit that they've been fed for years. They're now aware of the constant fucking hypocrisy that they haven't been able to see for years. And so how they react to that is their own fucking choice. I'm not telling them how to react to that, and I'm not going to.
Which, by the way, I am sorry that you had to go through all of that. And I'm also sorry that I labeled it as petty initially. I didn't actually realize how bad it had gotten. Doxing and death threats are never okay, and I had not known that it got that bad until your sympathy bait scheme video, as I was still combing through everything myself. Beyond calling you a transphobe in Mad Libs' video, I didn't think I really did a whole lot to contribute to that, but if I did, I'm also sorry in that regard. Genuinely, witch hunts have never been something that I've supported nor have wanted to contribute to, and seeing that you had genuine harassment thrown your way does feel really shitty. But while I now understand the anger and think it's justified to be angry, the anger doesn't justify the actions or the results, and it still feels like you're more weaponizing the victims of the FCK against those who may have wronged you, instead of actually caring for and assisting the victims themselves.
And how exactly have I used them, Susie? Slimmers gave me the FCK server by her own choice. She was literally on her old account and found that she was still in there and said, hey, do you want an invite? And I said, sure. I didn't force her to give me her testimony either. I asked her, hey, would you be willing to do this? And if you could, be on your old account so that they can't accuse me of me faking it being someone else, pretending to be Slimmers. Jamesy, I didn't pressure Jamesy into talking to me about the FCK and telling me his information that he remembered. And that was before I had the FCK server. Teddy, I did try to talk with about the FCK, and each time it went absolutely nowhere. So I eventually gave up when it came to Teddy. Because if Teddy doesn't want to talk about it, Teddy doesn't want to talk about it. I haven't forced them to work with me, haven't forced them to agree with me, haven't demanded them to support me or anything like that. So how the fuck am I using them? Make that make sense. And it's also really fucking ironic because from what I've heard from my sources, several sources by the way, and there's no evidence for this, so take this with a grain of salt, this is completely alleged, you all tried to get the victims to defend you. To work with you for the videos because it would make a better look for you all. So you could say, oh, well, the victims are working with us, so clearly they don't hold that much of an issue with us. And even if that was the case, that the minors that were in there, the victims, aren't that upset with you all, that doesn't change the fact that the audience can still take issue with the rampant fucking hypocrisy. In the last 4 years of you all trying to constantly condemn, get on other people's cases, try and hold them accountable, whatever the fuck that means, and grandstanding everyone else while keeping this a secret. Hence the sanctimonious hypocrisy that you say is just me falsely painting you all. That's my narrative. As if the evidence doesn't constantly show it. As if you yourself didn't admit to it in this video. You said that you found out that Toasty was a creep at the end of 2020. You said that you had a conversation where Toasty admitted to you that Slimmers was previously in the server. And we all know that you knew Slimmers was 15. There's no fucking way you missed that when you watched 2 different videos in 2019 and 2020 talking about how Slimmers was 15. Yet you never came out about Toasty. Nezi Monster, who very obviously knew about the porn being sent in the server, among the other shit with Toasty Vanilla, never came out about Toasty, but could grandstand and condemn someone else for sexual harassment just a few days later, after her DMs with Toasty Vanilla accusing him of sexual harassment and comparing him to V fucking Omega. But they're not sanctimonious hypocrites, guys. That's just my false narrative. So yes, it's fucking hilarious, and it's a giant joke that you want to try to lecture me and say that I don't care about the victims, when you could have talked about this for 4 fucking years. I've been the one who's been open about this since 2020. You all haven't, but I don't care. I'm just using the victims. Go fuck yourself.
I don't think you're wrong on everything, Akumu. I do think you have some decent points here or there, just like I can think of that with anyone I don't particularly vibe with. I just wish you were more responsible about it all. That's all. One more thing before I wrap up this topic, because I know it'll be brought up, is the accusation that I sent a privacy complaint towards Akumu's video in my roleplay video. The last time I addressed this accusation, I did the mistake of using my copyright history to somehow try and prove a negative. I have now been made very aware that privacy complaints wouldn't be in that section of YouTube, and that's my bad. I genuinely didn't know that because I've never sent a privacy complaint out to anyone. Much less Akumu, who was just doing a video responding to one of my own. And you can choose to believe me or not. A lot of you seem to take the route of, I do not believe a word you say, but let me put it this way. I didn't exactly like it when Zay did it to Akumu with a copyright strike. I'm not about to make the same petty mistake they did. I also have no idea who would have on my behalf, but I also wish they wouldn't have, because I would have known that it would have come back to me regardless, and the last thing that I wanted to do was fuck up being able to address things for myself. And Akumu, I know you also went back and tried to give some leeway to me in your second tweet about it. You leaned on such when one of my fans called you out about the accusation. But your first tweet about it does make the blatant accusation against me. It's literally a tweet away from the leniency one, so just saying, let's not pretend like you didn't also jump to that accusation.
I'll take the L on that. I can't definitively prove that Doodletones did the privacy complaint, and Doodletones can't definitively prove that they didn't, so it's up in the air. The video is still up, so it's not that big of a deal. Now I'm going to be moving into the next segment, which is Doodletones talking about Nuance, and I'm going to summarize it because I have no intentions on getting into its entirety, let alone much of it. In this segment, Doodletones talks about how nuance is very important and often forgotten in discourse and situations like this. And I would agree, if it wasn't for the obvious fucking fact that Doodletones conflates bullshit excuses and pathos appeals as nuance. Again, this is just the rehashing of the same thing that I told you about before, the supply and demand. They create that there needs to be nuance or a certain perspective put on this that is conveniently their playbook of tricks and excuses so that they can downplay or weasel out of the situation. But there's something that Doodles says, something that Doodles takes issue with, that I think is rather revealing. So I'm going to play that.
I don't know if I have a ton to say about this subject. I guess we'll see when the runtime is finished, but I don't think I'm going to spend too much time on it. However, good God, this is a behavior that generally needs addressing because it gets ridiculous how consistent the pattern is. In just about every drama, there are these people who will latch on to anything to further muddy the waters, try and get involved for the sensationalization and clicks, or try to swoop in with a grudge to help shotgunning statements at an individual to rile up their audience as the opposition. It happens in every drama without fail, and I know this is probably not the time, given I'm caught on the defensive side of a rather public one. It is a little too on the nose, but I kinda want to talk about why people shouldn't do that, and why it's even worse when an audience joins in without questioning things. Much of what I'll have to say in this section is directly an extension of the stuff Lio had to address in his video, so before you go further into this section, I highly recommend going to watch his video first. My video can wait, it's not gonna go anywhere. Okay, you back? You actually watched Lio's video, or did you just sit here waiting on me to continue? Because, frankly, the latter is hilarious, and you sure got me good, but honestly, I do suggest you go watch his video first. Link down below. Alright, now that you have totally watched his video to see what he has addressed and won't be going lost further into this section, let's talk. So, a grift, historically, was used to describe a petty or small-scale swindle. They were used to defraud a person or a group after gaining their trust and exploiting a combination of the victim's naivete, compassion, ego, conviction, irresponsibility, and or greed, specifically to gain an upper hand in unequal but voluntary exchanges. This has been able to come in the form of Ponzi schemes, misdirection, or using underhanded and dishonest tactics for a personal gain. Usually, when one is called a grifter, it's usually a monetary transaction that they're alluding to, but positions of power and credibility have been gained from grifting in the past, specifically in political debates and internet dramas. A grifter will join in on a situation specifically to gain notoriety, to get subscribers, or to gain credibility, even if they are doing none of the actual work or researching or discussing the topic in question in any meaningful or interesting way. That's, at best, mind you. At worst, having these people come in to leech off of every drama can muddy the waters, with people coming in without full context, making statements that are inflammatory and accusatory without evidence, or misinterpreting things people say in bad faith without further asking questions to clear up or clarify what one means when they say something. And in my opinion, these people are worse because you wind up with an audience who is uninformed, angry, and wanting justice. I have heard over the course of everything that's been happening the past couple of months a lot of these perspectives, from claims of Peaches plagiarizing Illumination's Grooming story to accusations against Zach about Kyle and I becoming the next of Lio's adopted children. These claims are not really that important when the leading accusations were of abuse and dishonesty, but they've been thrown into the mix because of those who are making the accusations wanting to further stifle the accused's ability to respond. Because if we just keep piling on more unnecessary allegations, then they have to address it all. If they don't, then my accusations remain untouched, and I can look like the more credible source in all of this. I'm merely reporting on the truth of it all. But whether or not these people are shouldn't be predicated on whether or not the accused is responding, especially when all this does is effectively gish gallop the accused. In these situations, it becomes the audience's job to remain skeptical, listen to the stories you are being told, but verify yourself whether they are accurate or not. For instance, going back to Zach and I being alleged siblings, if you asked either of us how we felt about Lio's found family dynamic as of current, both of us would agree that maybe Lio's success rate is a sign that he shouldn't continue doing so. If not for the sake of those he adopts, then for himself, as this situation shows sometimes those who are helped are ungrateful and will look for an excuse to ruin someone. However, no one wants to ask us because we're friends with Lio, right? We hadn't gone and publicly disavowed him the minute these allegations came out. We aren't saying anything about the Rosemary Ramsey call, so we must be ableists. We aren't saying anything about his abuse of these kids, so we must be abuse apologists. We aren't saying anything about the FCK log, so we must be okay with grooming and inappropriate behavior around minors. Never mind the nuances behind what actually all happened behind the scenes, or what might be able to debunk or further dispel some of the notions that are being created. When I said that I didn't want to make a statement, or wanted to wait to pass judgment until Lio's statement came out, that should have notified you guys that I wanted to remain skeptical, that I was looking at these allegations with a level of scrutiny, which should have also been no surprise when I literally detail my skepticism within my video on Brooke. The more my silence remained, the more it should have told you guys that these things were being looked into, or at the very least, that I wanted to take these allegations very seriously. To rush a creator to put out a response or demand that the accused only apologize without further ability to debunk any faulty narrative.
Putting the obvious, subtle shade thrown at me aside, you talk about nuance as if you've provided any nuance. None of what you've provided changes a fucking thing about the FCK, nor have you debunked any faulty fucking narrative. You've effectively done nothing. This video has been nothing but a waste of everyone's time, and the only reason I'm entertaining it is to show people that. You have brought nothing to the table so far. I really couldn't imagine making 2 hours worth of a video that insistently claims to bring nuance to the table and brings nothing but excuses and pedantic complaints, and then wants to call that nuance.
Shows me that the audience of this particular situation did not take these allegations very seriously. Because if they did, then they would recognize the lack of evidence in these allegations as being a problem, and understand the silence as a sign that things are being listened to and addressed. But the grifters in this situation are absolutely worse, because whereas the audience might not know exactly how to reach out to a creator, the grifters do. They know that there is a chance for an average creator to be relatively trusting when they have allegations thrown at them, so they'd be more accepting, cooperative, and or more open to discussing with them in order to get their own stories out there. But they choose to not even take that chance, specifically so they can make videos laughing at the misfortune, or make videos talking about how both sides are bad, or again to join in to further shotgun allegations that may or may not be true. This can confuse the audience or make the outrage more directionless, and when that happens, statements like, "These people are hypocrites because of this unrelated situation," or "Why did these people not call these things out sooner?" may start to pop up.
All of that to lead up to this. A complaint about how people are taking issue with the rampant hypocrisy, or are aware of the fact that many of these individuals knew about this shit going on in the FCK and with Toasty, and are questioning these individuals for not talking about it. That is Doodletones' real issue. Susie started this segment by proclaiming that there's no nuance being applied to the situation, but that's not the issue that Susie actually has. Susie is taking issue with the type of nuance that's being applied. The fact that the rampant hypocrisy is being acknowledged. The fact that these people are being questioned for why they never said anything. Something that, guess what? They never provide answer to because they can't. They just don't want it acknowledged that they knew for years. Take, for instance, the statement that happened just moments ago about how there's a nuance behind the scenes.
We aren't saying anything about the FCK log, so we must be okay with grooming and inappropriate behavior around minors. Never mind the nuances behind what actually all happened behind the scenes.
And yet, none of that nuance that you've supposedly brought to light with this video, or Lyo's video, changes the fact that many of you knew what was going on in the FCK server and about Toasty, and still told no one, yet condemned other people for similar shit, or for shit less than this. We know that Nezi Monster knew of the porn being sent in there. We know that Nezi Monster knew about the Slimmers porn chat, and only said something a few days after Ben the Looney threatened to expose that same thing about the FCK. We know that Nezi Monster had an idea as to just how fucking bad Toasty was from the DMs you provided us, and we know that you had an idea as to how bad the FCK was. You said that you had an idea towards the end of 2020, that Toasty was a creep. You all had years you could have talked about it, but you didn't. You all left, and we hoped that it wasn't going to be talked about. The nuance can't magically change what the evidence shows everyone, that quite a few of the adults that were in the FCK server knew that there were minors in there. Madlibs, Hopeless Peaches, Miss Nezi, Nezi Monster, and Toasty Vanilla all knew that Slimmers was 15. Adlibs, Miss Nezi, Hopeless Peaches, and Nezi Monster all made videos in September of 2019, before the FCK server fucking existed, stating that Slimmers was 15. Nezi Monster made 3 videos mentioning their ages. Nezi Monster's first video on Madame that mentioned Slimmers' age was released in September of 2019.
I hope you all appreciate the shit I do, because I had to watch this twice, and the first viewing actually gave me a headache. Howdy doody everyone, I'm back, and this time I come bearing a script! So if y'all haven't heard, a Leafy Was Here ripoff is in some hot water for basically tormenting a young 15-year-old artist by the name of Slimer's Cryotic. Be sure to go and give her some love, by the way, all links in the description.
That same month, Hopeless Peaches made a video mentioning Slimmers' age.
Hello everyone, this is Hopeless Peaches, and today I have quite a serious video. I will not be hiding any names in this, mostly because they've already been spread about the internet enough, and everyone will be just saying it in the comment section anyway, so I might as well just skip over that. Instead, because I will be saying names in this video, I 100% encourage you not to go harass anyone. If you have any grievances with my video, go ahead and tell me. However, if you have any grievances with what anyone of any party do in this video that I'm talking about, don't go and tell them, please. Let's be respectful and go through this in a respectable, calm manner where we the better person. So what did happen, and what am I talking about? Well, a YouTuber by the name of Madam has recently been accused of stealing art from a 15-year-old artist called Slummers.
Nani made a video mentioning Slummers' age.
Get it. I see where you're coming from, madam, when it comes to that. However, I don't think it's a reason to act the way you have been acting. Put yourself in Slimmer's shoes for a moment. You're a 15-year-old artist.
Madlibs made a video mentioning her age.
For those of you who don't know what the Madam drama is, what happened is this piece of shit YouTuber who calls herself the female Leafy is here. Not sure why you'd ever want to brand yourself like that, but she commissioned a 15-year-old artist.
Nezi made a video mentioning her age.
See, Madame is a YouTuber who was interested in commissioning an artist called Slimers. Slimers, due to their age, did not have a PayPal, therefore could not accept payment.
So her age was important then, but not when she was in the server. We also know that Nezi Monster knew of Jamesy's age, OMGIJ252, because she stated it in the collab that she did with Ponder Sprocket multiple fucking times, that Jamesy was yet another minor that Madame was going after, and that it was a repeated pattern of behavior, Madame going after kids.
Now demonstrated pattern of behavior of threatening minors into silence.
Laughing at a child for losing his friend over a joke he had apologized for making 3 months prior.
Mind you, this is a collab that they started working on October of 2019. So Nezi Monster knew of at least 2 minors being in the FCK. We know that you, Susie, knew that Slummers was 15 because you put 2 videos back to back on your best of the year list that told you so. And we all know the prerequisite to end up on the best and worst of the year list is that you have to watch those videos. That's what you told Kumo in the comments. Ponder's video and Ponder and Nezi Monster's collab both reiterate that Slummers was a minor and was 15 multiple fucking times. Then we have the fact that there's the porn spam in the chat. Quite a few of the adults either knew about the porn spam, such as Hopeless Peaches and Nezi Monster, and the others participated in it, such as Mizizi, Madlibs, Fuchsia Butter, Toasty Vanilla, especially fucking Toasty Vanilla. You think that stating the nuance of when you all found out a certain detail in 2020 magically makes it better for you all, as if that'll magically change the fact that you still knew for 4 years. Stating when you found out in 2020 or when an individual knew in 2020 doesn't change the fact that, guess what? At some point you still found out in 2020, and that means you still knew for 4 years and never said anything, yet could condemn and go after other people all these years. So now that I've gone over all of that information, explain to me how the nuance is supposed to magically fucking change it. Because it can't change the fact that you knew for 4 years, which is what you're bitching about. People bringing up and questioning why you didn't say anything for 4 fucking years. How exactly does the nuance, does the benefit of the doubt, change any of what I just went over?
People like Brooke the Dragon Dog running victory laps around the situation because 4 days after my video on her dropped, more allegations followed, was definitely an example of the latter, and anyone who tried to connect the situation to Cloak and Dagger not only shows me that they do not understand Cloak and Dagger, but that they don't even understand the situation that's currently being faced surrounding Lio, the Senate, and the FCK. Another example of this is in regards to the Rosa Ray Ramsey call. People dismiss what Rosa did purely on the backs of how Lio and crew handled it. And let's not get it twisted, that call is insufferably bad. But because of the narrative surrounding it and how muddied everything got with people looking into it with only a quarter of the knowledge regarding what was going on, I have seen people on Twitter insinuate that Senate only thought Rosa did bad things, implying that Rosa did nothing wrong. And while we can have a discussion over whether or not the actions in that call were justified, or when insults and scolding turns into bullying, to say that there wasn't a reason for that call is misinformed at best and downright apathetic of the situation at worst. For more info on that, I'll link to the Mysterious Mr. Enters video on Rebecca Starlight down below as well, as that is directly connected. To some, this might not be enough. Getting angry at Rosa in general is unfair because she's on the spectrum, and, might not be able to understand what to do in a situation where a predator in the room. And, that can be fair. Not everyone will know how to react in every situation regardless of if they're on the spectrum or not, but I do have to wonder, are we maybe falling dangerously close to infantilization here? I don't know, but it is something to consider regardless. Again, I want to be clear that the way that Rosa was treated was horrible and ableist, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it wasn't. I just want to be cautious that we don't dip too far into the opposite direction, Time frames are also an important factor that have been ignored throughout this situation. Humans never stay stagnant, and so looking at these situations in a vacuum and trying to compare them to when the creators involved are older and or potentially more knowledgeable on things is not fair to the individuals in question, because at that point, why even change or grow at all? Why would we try to get better when people will forever view us as our worst states?
Really? This is just repeating what they've all been saying anytime this shit is brought up. How can an individual change, improve, or grow as a person if what they've done is hidden, if they lie about what they did, if they deny what they did, if they downplay what they did, or if they try and keep what they did a secret? How can they change while simultaneously doing all those things? Make that make sense to me, Susie. You can't. And that's why you don't acknowledge that. Instead, you just keep saying the same thing that the others have already said, that Nezi has also said. No one is saying you can't change. What we're saying here is, you all kept it a secret for 4 years. Then the second it comes out, then it's, oh, I've already changed. It's excuse after excuse after fucking excuse.
It's frustrating being the accused in this scenario because whereas normally people will call out for apologies to be given and accountability to be taken, when they actually are, they're ignored, disregarded, or treated as if these situations just happened a day or so ago.
At this point, I think it's very obvious what Doodletones is doing. The mental gymnastics of leaping over what everyone's issue is and going straight to, well, you're not allowing us to apologize and take accountability. And it's also very obviously mostly about Nezi Monster, the Dumb and Dumber duo here, folks. And also, there's no explanation on what accountability is in this situation, or how they've actually taken accountability. These people love to use the word accountability and say that other people need to be held accountable. Finding one fucking video from these people throughout the last year or so that doesn't mention that fucking word, good luck. Please, do it. Give me an example. Have fun, because you're not gonna. If you were to take Lyo's addressing things video and take a drink every time he says accountability, you're gonna end up with alcohol poisoning by the end of it. But let's just assume that they mean their Twitter threads, where they are supposed to be open about what they've done, so that they can inform people and then apologize, okay? Let's just run with that. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and some leeway there, and I'll say, okay, that's taking accountability. Sure, all right. So if that is their way of taking accountability, why is it none of these people are open about what they've done? If you look across all the Twitter threads that have come out throughout this situation since February and so on, from Nezi Monster, Hopeless Peaches, Fuchsia Butter, Ellie Momelli, they do a couple of things. They either don't tell you what they did, vaguely talk about what happened in the server, they downplay their involvement and what they knew, or they try and push blame onto other people. Let's use Nezi Monsters as a first example. I'm going to show these on screen to you guys as I go over this. Not once in this Twitter thread, or any of the Twitter threads that Nezi Monster has since made since this situation, has Nezi Monster admitted to knowing that Slimmers was a minor and in the server, to knowing that Jamesy was a minor and in the server, to knowing that there was porn being spammed and shown to these minors in this server. She doesn't admit to the fact that she knew about the chat dedicated to Slimmers' porn, her NSFW artwork, and that she only wanted it removed once the group was at risk of being exposed. She doesn't admit to the fact that she knew a good majority of the issues with Toasty Vanilla, calling him a sexual harasser, comparing him to V Omega, and all of that shit in August of 2020, and that she never came out about Toasty. She just says that she got on to Toasty in this Twitter thread, the one on February 25th. None of her Twitter threads mention a fucking thing about that. How about Hopeless Peach's Twitter thread, where she doesn't mention the fact that she knew Slimmers was a minor and in the server? Keep in mind, Peaches made her Twitter thread February 25th. Before she made her Twitter thread, she did a call with Lyo Convoy and a Crystal Flame. And in this call, she admitted that she knew Slimmers was a minor. Why didn't that find its way into the Twitter thread? Ellie Momelli, she says that she was in there very briefly, and the few memes that she sent were inappropriate, and that she left, and that she didn't know jack shit. She hardly knew a fucking thing. And yet, we found out from Nezi Monster's DMs that when Ellie was under the name Micro Mavi, she blocked Toasty because of some of the weird shit he was doing. So clearly she had some other idea. And you can watch my video on Fuchsia Butter's apology and whatnot to see the issues with that, trying to blame Toasty for shit he had nothing to do with. So the point comes down to this. It's not that people don't want you to apologize or take accountability. It's that people want you to be transparent and open about what your involvement was and what you knew and what you did or didn't do. Maybe you should look at why people don't like these Twitter threads and apologies in an attempt to take accountability. But I think you already have, and you just don't want to acknowledge those reasons because they're inconvenient. because deep down you know exactly what you all are doing. You're leaving out the unsavory details because you don't want people not liking you, because it contradicts the persona that you all have been putting on in front of your audience.
I've been harping on what the nuances of the Fruitcake Club are more or less since I started talking about it in this video, but that's because there is a lot of nuance to it, as much as people like Akumu want to disregard that fact. Even discounting myself and how I was not aware of the ages of the people in the chat.
1. You have continuously kept going on and on and on about the supposed fucking nuance with the FCK behind the scenes, yet you have provided absolutely fucking nothing in this video to change what the perspective is of everybody. You have provided no factual information to change the current understanding. And secondly, you knew Slamerz's age. You watched 2 videos that told you that in 2019 and 2020. If you're going to lie, at least try and cover your tracks, please.
Or Nezi's continual pushback of Toasty's porn posting.
In the DMs you provided us, Nezi only takes issue with him sending porn in her server, not the FCK server. The next time she gets onto him about it is August, where she requests that he deletes the Slamerz porn chat a few days after Ben the Looney threatened to expose that about the group, saying that it could become an issue. The next time she mentions anything to do with porn and spamming it is around August 17th. Her saying something in the DMs does not change the fact that she knew about it, did not talk about it, only said something when it was convenient for her to say something, or when it bothered her, such as in her own fucking Discord server. Could condemn people publicly for less than that, and yet never came out about Toasty. That is people's issue, and you know that. You showing those DMs and providing that nuance doesn't change a fucking thing.
You have Ellie Momeli's existence in the chat for a day and could come to a conclusion she probably didn't think much of the situation.
If there was nothing alarming to any degree, why was she only in there for a day? And why did she block Toasty? You should probably be a bit more careful with what you put in your videos.
Then the Looney's alleged threat to reveal everything about the chat to the public, showing he thought something was up upon his departure. Toby Majestic, who was only in the chat when the known minors weren't. There's a whole slew of possible explanations to the behaviors of the members of that chat, and it doesn't need to excuse them, not at all. But it does help explain things and giving details to further those explanations. After this situation, I don't think I ever want to hear the names Pro-Jared, Spoctor, Slazo, or quite ever again. It's not everyone, but a good chunk of the audience of this drama have shown me that nobody really learns from these situations. It takes time to weed through evidence and allegations, especially when there are so many allegations that have to be responded to. You cannot just rely on testimony to dictate your opinions of someone. There could be way more to a situation than meets the eye, which could tell you either that the allegations given are overblown, uncharitably misconstrued, or even downright fabricated, such be the case with Lyo's abusive tendencies specifically. And in regards to the FCK, well, I just think the lack of nuance or care is particularly upsetting. Because while yes, absolutely, people should have been more responsible in that situation, especially those who knew Slamerz was in the chat and knew her age, I think the upset towards that irresponsibility is justified, but we can't keep ignoring the accountability and change in those who have answered for their...
See, right there. I was just talking about this before, just a few minutes ago. The Doodles is trying to insist that these people, especially Nezi Monster, has already changed, has already paid for it. But how exactly? She very clearly didn't want it coming out, stating, could people stop kicking a 4-year-old's hornet's nest? She didn't talk about it for 4 years, further indicative that she didn't want it coming out. And in her posts that are talking about it recently, they're all vague. Not a single one, just as Doodles just brought up, mentions the fact that she knew that Slamerz was 15, that she knew that Slamerz was in the server and being shown porn, that there was a chat dedicated to her porn. Not a single post from Nezi Monster mentions that.
Now, before we wrap up, I wish to throw out some sporadic footnotes of things that probably need further addressing. Things that either came out after I was kind of done and dusted, or things that I couldn't quite segue into discussing in the video. You know, just for some last-minute points. To elaborate further on the Ellie Momeli stuff, it's absurd that Akumu stretches to such a conspiratorial assumption based off of the names of those harassing Ellie. Like, heaven forbid we acknowledge Doodle clones as an example of someone making an account to harass someone else based on their own name. Like, how many Harley TBS accounts are there? Akumu is basically putting Ellie into a position to prove a negative that she's not behind the accounts. Like, how would you be able to argue against that or prove that to not be the case?
And this is another example to show you all just how fucking messy this video is, no doubt because he rushed it. He's going on about the Ellie Momeli-Tism report for the second time, saying the same thing, and the worst part about it is, what he's saying right here, that I assumed, is completely contradicted by the previous time that he talked about it, where he played the clip where I clearly state I either think it's A or it's B.
You've put someone's harassment into question, claiming that we could be faking it because you think it'll be used for sympathy points.
What I find odd is that Ellie managed to screenshot all of these seemingly at the same time as they were receiving the messages. 8:50, the first message from Yamamama is 8:37, 1:23, as they got a message from the Middleton account, and then the names. Yamamama 336, Philly Pilly, Ellie Mo Melly, Melly Mo Ellie. You notice that? Bit of a rhyming thing that goes on with Ellie's name. And the usernames also have that same rhyming thing going on there, at least two of them. And the other one is Middleton with Decon Con. So what I'm suspecting is that either A, this is an individual who already knew Ellie and had a grudge with Ellie, and they made these alt accounts to fuck with Ellie because they're upset about the FCK thing, or B, these accounts were made by Ellie or someone else to message Ellie, or, themselves, herself, and say all of this. And again, it's also odd to go after Ellie, of all people, whose name was just mentioned in passing. I never made any definitive claim or assumed anything. I just provided my skepticism in a format of A or B. This is fucking embarrassing.
On the note of similar account names, the Fur Affinity account that was going around that people were using to claim Lio was a degenerate.
One of our sources have stumbled on one of Lio Convoy's accounts on some website similar to that of DeviantArt. This website hosts a variety of degen content and even has a favorite feature, kind of like your own playlist of what you like. And Lio's favorites are something else. This is all alleged, but I do trust my source, and the evidence I'm about to show you is rather compelling. I'll be blurring these images, but don't worry, I'll describe them to you. The first is a photo of a human man sticking his face into the vagina of a fire horse Pokemon.
Is also not inherently Lio. Y'all forget, Lio takes his name from a Transformers character, and he's—
It's also worth noting that Akumu never strictly proves how it even could be Lio. He doesn't even actually show the account name. He just asserts it's allegedly Lio, and that he trusts his sources before going into what that account has in its favorites. This is a flat-out fucking lie that anyone can check for themselves if they go watch that video. It's a good thing that I didn't delete that video like Lio wanted me to, because anyone can go fucking fact-check this. Not only did I show the account's fucking name right there at the top of the screenshot you just showed in your video, but in my follow-up video, I went over the fact that this Lio Convoy account was tagged by Patchwork Heart, one of Lio's longtime friends, when they were sharing artwork of the Lio Convoy that we all know. Now, if you don't know who Patchwork Heart is, there's someone who used to be very, very close with Lio Convoy up until recently. Adopted found family brothers or something along those lines. This is actually a post from Patchwork Heart, or Patchy the Cat, from 4 years ago. Lio Mandad, a gift from my friend Lio Convoy on Twitter. His hair has grown too much in quarantine. Now then again, you could think nothing of it because it says, for Lio Convoy on Twitter. And yet, something really odd about this, and I find a little fascinating, is that you can actually click on the part that says Lio Convoy. So first you claim that I don't show the username. Then you claim that I don't show any evidence that it even could be Lio. Both of which are flat out false, and in the fucking clip that you play of me showing the screenshots, you can see the username right fucking there. So that's just an outright lie.
He's far from the only Transformers fan out there. Y'all are running off of assumptions based on nothing. Shock to no one. Like, people can even share legal names with each other. By now, some people might know that my first and middle name is shared with a pro wrestler, and not a single soul is gonna believe I'm the Heartbreak Kid. Come on now. Lio has even pointed out that he shares a name with someone who spread the AIDS virus and is currently doing prison time.
Here's the thing. My name, my legal name, and by the way, I have no problem saying it because I'm okay with that, is Thomas Guerra. I was born in 1985. There is another man by the name of Thomas Guerra, also born in 1985, that is currently doing several years in a federal prison because he is the first person in a very specific state who was convicted for intentionally spreading AIDS. So if I was the person that you had beef with, I'm pretty sure you'd be running around telling people that I gave people AIDS, because I guess reading a court document is too hard for you.
So even he's previously pointed out how this is a bad point. This is another instance of specifically Akumu throwing shit at a wall to make new things to have to address.
I could give a fuck less whether Lio addresses a degen account or not. The goal was not to gish gallop. I know that's a new favorite word lately of the SCC members. I saw Fractured Light and a couple of others throw that word around. It's hardly gish galloping. Lio himself put himself in this fucking light. He chose to defend Peaches. He chose to be the FCK's White Knight. He even admitted that he was White Knighting for Peaches on stream with me.
Regardless of how true or not they are, and I'm so fucking tired. Because I couldn't really segue this into the rest of the video, credibility and emotion can be just as important as logic in a debate and discussion. And some people need to remember that. Regarding my FCK spreadsheet, Akumu focuses on the labeled last few messages in there that were claimed to be for Lio, and tries to make the claim that Lio was going to attack him over them. However, that was actually Hateful Eight's idea, not Lio's. What Lio specifically wanted was in the what we are looking for section of the doc. This was again another instance of Akumu making assumptions where the actual events play a bit differently.
Pointing out that one of my predictions from the Tism Report series was wrong won't change the fact that the majority of them were right. I called the fact that you all were going to use excuses, to claim that no one wants nuance, and that you're trying to provide a nuanced take, which is just fucking excuses. Convenient excuses that allow you all to weasel out of it. Droning on about bad faith intentions. Unable to prove that I've lied, so instead saying that I'm dishonestly framing it, yet can't prove that either. Making new accusations against your detractors to distract away from it. Repeating old accusations against your detractors to distract away from it. Leaving out things that you all did because they're inconvenient, and you don't want to inform your audience and admit to doing it. Take, for example, Lio apologizing for the false accusation Supreme comment, yet not admitting in the video that he lied for Peaches. Or how about the other prediction that I made in regards to Nezi Monster and her statement, implying that she knew more and still said nothing. Oh wait, you showed us that by showing us the DMs between her and Toasty Vanilla, that she knew way more about Toasty. I think I've made my point.
I wouldn't be focusing so hard on what Akumu has said if he would just stop talking for real.
And this is an instance of someone needing to take their own fucking advice. All you've done throughout this video is yap, provide an excuse, shoot yourself in the foot, and repeat. Droning on and on about nuance, as if you've actually provided some fucking nuance to this situation. You think that if you keep talking about nuance, it'll convince your audience that you've actually brought nuance to the table, while you're complaining about the nuance that other people have brought to the table, such as going over the rampant fucking dishonesty and the rampant fucking hypocrisy from all the people in the FCK. But you don't want that, and of course you don't want that, because you know that this is all beginning to unravel, because people are going to be less and less fooled by you and your community. The amount of comments I've gotten of people talking about how annoying you sound, aside from your dog shit fucking takes, your terrible excuses, your pedantic complaints that don't change a fucking thing but you magically think that they do. This could keep going on, but overall, take your own fucking advice. Hardly anyone wanted you involved in this situation. I can promise you that, because you fuck up everything that you touch. It's a mystical fucking art, and you are perfect at it.
Some of you need to learn that you can't just trust everyone that is civil to you, and the rest of you frankly can't be trusted yourselves. Alternatively, some of y'all also need to realize that if you're going into someone addressing their allegations with the intent to believe absolutely nothing, then that is also a problem, because why should we even address you or your allegations at all? You have already closed your mind to any and all discussion. The point of acknowledging change in the Lio chapter is, at the end of the day, just my moral compass. Many people after seeing the leak of my video claimed that I'm just making excuses or downplaying what Lio did, but I want to clarify my intentions there. Let me clear the air that I was explaining the reason for Lio's behavior.
I was just explaining why. No, you gave us a fucking sob story about how Lio Convoy grew up. People want to know whether it happened and whether it didn't. Not you reaching all the way back to whip out a traumatic experience for some fucking pathos appeal to the audience. I've already explained the issue with Doodletones and co thinking that providing the why is actually answering people's fucking questions. And I'm not going to repeat myself yet again for this fucking loop. balloon. But I will say this. Go through any of my videos where I address any of the accusations levied at me. Go through any of my videos, especially the ones in my Art CC playlist, where I address accusations thrown at me, or the things that I did do, such as deleting comments. I did do that at one point in 2020. Shouldn't have done it, but I did. You don't see me digging deep into my childhood, telling you all about it, my traumatic experiences as to why I was doing it. Fun fact, no one fucking gives a shit.
Not to excuse it. A reason is not an excuse, and some of y'all kinda need to learn that fact.
If you truly believed that, then you all wouldn't constantly try and tell everyone the why, as if it'll magically make the problem go away. Here's a perfect fucking example. Lio Convoy and the Jax shit. For the longest time, when anyone would bring up the shit with Jax, Lio would state his why. That Jax was talking about guns and gangs, even going as far as mentioning possibility of Jax shooting up a school. And that was his alleged reason as to why he called. He told that to Pizza.
Dreadful Jax. You want to know what happened with him? He was pulled into call, independently, not given any roles, to try to get him to stop beefing with some other dumb kid. I hop in the call, and Jax loses his mind, threatens to shoot me, threatens to do all this. Couldn't call his parents because they're deaf, which is why he gets away with this nonsense. So instead, I called his school. Because as you know, Pizza, we live in the United States of America, where school shootings are pretty common. And the last thing I want is to have this idiot pop off his mouth about how he's been in gangs and how he's hurt people and how he has guns and do nothing, only to find out, the kid went psycho and killed people.
And yet, no one fucking cares because that doesn't justify the action remotely. The fact of the matter is, the issue of the matter is that he got a hold of a 15-year-old's private information with the expressed intent to call his school and ruin his life. He acted on that threat, called the school, wanting to give the kid a scare. He is a 36-year-old man on the internet who way overstepped his fucking boundary because a kid wasn't intimidated by him in a fucking phone call after threatening to show up to his house. On Discord of all fucking places. They want to know if that is true or not. You can fucking see the why. It's because Jax wasn't intimidated. That's why Lio said you should be scared. People want to know if it's true or not. And if it is true, why lie about it? That's what people are here for. But Lio seems to think mentioning the why will magically fucking change that. Guess what? It doesn't.
I don't think Nezi or myself are totally without sin in the FCK situation, but I do feel like there is a lot of nuance to what happened in that chat, and I don't feel like the Fruitcake Leaks or Akumu are being very responsible with their coverage.
How about the nuance that you gave us inadvertently when you showed us the DMs between Nezi Monster and Toasty Vanilla? Because me and you both know that what you intended to do with those DMs was to try and contradict me and show that, well, Nezi Monster did try to speak up against Toasty in their DMs, and calling that nuance. But what you didn't realize was that showing us those DMs confirmed that she knew even more about Toasty, far worse shit about Toasty, and still said nothing. So in a way, to give you some fucking credit that was obviously by accident, you did provide nuance, just not the kind of nuance you wanted to provide. It's fucking hilarious that you fail in what you intend to do, and then you succeed in doing the exact fucking opposite, all at the same time.
Nor do I feel like they're doing the victims any sense of justice. Coming from Light Yagami over here, I don't want to hear it from him. Wait for Thuman's video and listen to the stories from the victims themselves. Let them take back their stories.
Let them take back their stories. Implies that their stories were taken from them to begin with. Where? Who has stolen their stories? Where have I plastered their stories on my YouTube channel, painting it as though I was the one affected by it? Not once. I haven't seen anyone else do that either, by the way. Instead, all I've done is talk about the FCK server, talk about my experience with the FCK. Those individuals can talk about their own personal experiences anytime they want to. I haven't tried to stop them remotely, and I don't know anyone who has. One slight exception, some people from the FCK back in 2020 did try to get a few of them not to talk about their experiences. But guess what? That's for them to talk about, so they can get into that specifics. The point is this, they can talk about it wherever they want to, whenever the fuck they want to. Just as I've been talking about my experience with the FCK for years now, despite the outrage, despite the hatred that has come from the art commentary community, to them I'm blaspheming their idols. But these individuals that have been impacted by the FCK, the minors that were there, they can talk about it any fucking time they want to. They can make Twitter threads, YouTube videos, whenever and wherever they want to. No one is trying to stop them. Instead, what you're trying to do is piggyback off of them by suggesting that we have stolen their fucking stories, that we took it right from them. when that didn't fucking happen. It's this pathetic attempt at moral grandstanding, and we can see right through it. This video did almost everything I was told it would do. Not a single time does he disprove the evidence or prove I've lied, and because he can't, Susie drones on with tangents to distract the viewers in a variety of ways that keep changing. The first thing that Doodles pushes is that I have bad faith intentions and that I'm dishonestly framing the situation with no actual example. Two, that he tries to provide the audience is that I make uncharitable assumptions and don't give the benefit of the doubt when the uncharitable assumption about Nezi Monster was right. And to give the benefit of the doubt, I'd have to ignore evidence. That's odd. Why insist on the benefit of the doubt instead of the fucking evidence? This is all on top of the fact that me correcting the information I've put out completely contradicts that. Then it turned into Akumu's doing this to ruin credibility and reputation. Finally, though, a specific answer on my supposed bad faith intentions, but that's a strange complaint coming from someone actively targeting my credibility with this bad faith horseshit. I don't need to aim to damage any of your all's credibility and reputation. Why would I spend my time trying to do that when you all are willing to do that to yourselves? And the irony gets even better, considering that this is Doodle's defense for a group that tried to ruin reputation and credibility with their own hit pieces. And then this video turned into a bitch fest because I haven't talked about Toasty Vanilla as much, and I've had a few interactions with him, and I can't make a response on something that doesn't even fucking exist. There's no response from Toasty on Twitter or YouTube. Then it turned into pushing the Akumu doesn't care about the victims, and that's coming from someone who knew for 4 years and stayed quiet. And it's towards someone who has tried to talk about the FCK for 4 years. The sheer gall, the testicular fortitude, it's fucking great. All that yapping, and yet can't cite where the evidence is wrong, or anything. Almost like it's an attack at reputation and credibility that doesn't change a fucking thing because the evidence is still true. And all because they can't disprove it. Now, out of all of the Doodletones videos that I've made a video on, this is by far the worst fucking one. And it doesn't stop there, because out of all of the videos that I've watched from Doodletones, this is the worst fucking one. It is all over the place. A complete yap fest that sets out with this mission of providing nuance, and then the entire time he's shooting himself in the fucking foot and then crying about it, while trying to point the finger at me and everyone else. I thought that Lio was pathetic, up until I watched this video. All this video is coping and seething presented as some thoughts and statements. But I hope that I've been able to entertain you all. I hope that you've gotten a kick out of it. Now that we're at the end of this fucking shit show, I'd love to get your all's thoughts.
You are coping and seething. You just can't accept what you're seeing. Yes, you're coping and seething. The truth it is scalding, and now you are molding and coping so hard.